The patrol car's lights painted Ryan Hale's face in alternating shades of red and blue as Officer Elena Cruz's hand rested on her service weapon. "Sir, I need you to keep your hands where I can see them." His 6-year-old daughter was 3 blocks away with a babysitter, waiting for him to come home from a job that had run late. Ryan's heart hammered as he raised his palms slowly, the smell of sawdust still clinging to his work shirt. He had no idea that this moment, this terrifying, humiliating mistake, would be the beginning of everything. Before we dive into Ryan's story, I want to invite you on this 2-hour journey with me. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I love seeing how far these stories travel, and if you're ready for a tale about second chances, unexpected love, and the courage it takes to let someone in when you've built walls to survive, hit that like button and settle in. This is a story about 2 people who thought they were done with love, and how sometimes the universe has other plans. Ryan Hale had exactly $43 in his checking account when his daughter asked him why some kids had 2 parents and she only had 1. It was a Tuesday night in early October, the kind of evening when Portland's rain came down in sheets that blurred the apartment windows into abstract watercolor paintings. Ryan sat cross-legged on the worn carpet of their living room, his back against the sagging couch that had come with the furnished unit, watching Mia build an elaborate castle out of the cardboard boxes he'd brought home from a job site. "Some families are just different, kiddo," Ryan said, his voice carrying the practiced ease of a father who'd answered variations of this question 100 times. "Like how some people have brown eyes and some have blue. Doesn't make one better than the other." Mia looked up from her construction project, her dark curls, so much like her mother's, falling across her forehead. At 6 years old, she had Ryan's gray eyes, but her mother's everything else. The determined set of her jaw, the way she chewed her bottom lip when concentrating, the stubborn tilt of her chin when she didn't quite believe what she was hearing. "But Emma's dad picks her up from school every day," Mia said, returning her attention to carefully balancing a piece of cardboard across 2 box towers. "And her mom makes fancy lunches with the crusts cut off and everything in little containers." Ryan felt the familiar twist in his chest, that particular brand of inadequacy that came with single parenthood and a bank account that never seemed to recover from the previous month's emergencies. "You don't like the lunches I make?" "I love your lunches, Daddy." Mia's voice was immediate and fierce, the way only a 6-year-old's could be. She abandoned her castle and crawled across the carpet to throw her arms around his neck. "You make the best peanut butter sandwiches in the whole world. I was just wondering." Ryan wrapped his arms around his daughter and breathed in the scent of the strawberry shampoo he'd bought on sale at the grocery store. These moments, these simple, perfect moments, were what kept him going through the 14-hour days, the jobs that paid just enough to cover rent and groceries, the nights when he fell into bed so exhausted he could barely remember his own name. "Tell you what," he said, pulling back to look at her face. "How about tomorrow I cut the crusts off and use those fancy toothpicks from the takeout place? Make it all professional-like." Mia's face split into a grin that could have powered the entire apartment complex. "Can you make them into triangles?" "Triangles, squares, maybe even some circles if I'm feeling really ambitious." "You can't make circles out of bread, Daddy. That's silly." "Watch me." She giggled, the sound filling their small living room like sunlight breaking through clouds, and Ryan felt something settle in his chest. This was enough. This had to be enough. Because wanting more, wanting a partner, wanting help, wanting someone to share the weight of being everything to this tiny human who depended on him for literally everything, that was a luxury he couldn't afford. Not in terms of money, though that was true too, but in terms of emotional bandwidth. Ryan Hale was 28 years old, and he was tired in a way that sleep never quite fixed. "All right, architect," he said, untangling himself from Mia's embrace. "Bath time in 10 minutes. Think your castle will survive until tomorrow?" "I'll build a moat," Mia declared, already crawling back to her cardboard kingdom. "That'll protect it." Ryan pushed himself up from the floor, his knees protesting in a way that made him feel twice his age. The apartment was small, a 1-bedroom that he'd converted into a 1.5 by hanging a curtain to section off a corner for Mia's bed and dresser. His own mattress lived in the living room, folded against the wall during the day to create more space. The kitchenette was barely large enough for one person to stand in, The bathroom had a shower that only produced hot water if you waited exactly 4.5 minutes, and the heating was so unreliable that Ryan had invested in 3 space heaters from a thrift store. But it was theirs, clean, safe, and theirs. Ryan moved into the kitchenette and started preparing Mia's lunch for the next day. The routine was so familiar, his hands moved on autopilot. Bread from the bag, peanut butter from the jar that was almost empty, add that to the grocery list, strawberry jam that Mia preferred over grape. He pulled out his pocket knife and carefully cut the crusts off, then sliced the sandwich into triangles with the precision he usually reserved for measuring crown molding. Through the doorway, he could hear Mia narrating an elaborate story about a princess who lived in a cardboard castle and fought dragons made of dust bunnies. Her imagination was boundless, untainted by the financial stress and constant juggling that defined Ryan's existence. That was what he fought for every single day, keeping her world magical while he handled all the sharp edges of reality. His phone buzzed on the counter. Ryan wiped his hands on a dish towel and checked the screen. A text from Marcus, his crew lead, and the closest thing Ryan had to a best friend. Job in Hillsboro ran over. Gonna need you there by 6 a.m. tomorrow. Overtime pay. Ryan's thumb hovered over the keyboard. 6 a.m. meant leaving the apartment by 5:15, which meant waking Mia at 4:45 to drop her at Marcus's sister's place. Elena watched Mia sometimes when Ryan's schedule got weird. She ran a small daycare out of her home and had known Marcus since high school, but 4:45 was pushing it, even for emergency care. How late we talking? Ryan typed back. The response came quickly. Probably till 7 or 8 p.m. Client's a lawyer, wants the whole basement finished before some big party this weekend. Said he'd pay double if we make it happen. Double pay. Ryan did the math in his head. Double pay on a 12-hour day would cover not just this month's groceries, but next month's too, with enough left over to maybe, finally, take Mia to that indoor playground she'd been asking about since summer. I'm in, he texted. Thanks for thinking of me. You're my best Finnish guy, man. Couldn't do it without you. Ryan set the phone down and stared at Mia's half-prepared lunch. Best Finnish guy. At 28, he'd somehow become the person contractors called when they needed crown molding that looked like it had been installed by someone who actually cared, when they needed baseboards that met at perfect 45-degree angles, when they needed someone reliable who showed up on time and didn't cut corners. It wasn't the life he'd imagined at 18 when he'd been accepted to Portland State's engineering program with a partial scholarship. But then Sarah had gotten pregnant their sophomore year, and suddenly abstract plans about degrees and careers had collided with the very concrete reality of an ultrasound photo and a due date. They tried to make it work, got married at the courthouse, moved into a cramped studio, juggled classes and part-time jobs and prenatal appointments that always seemed to conflict with everything else. Mia had arrived 6 weeks early, small and fierce and absolutely perfect. Ryan had held his daughter in the hospital, this tiny human who weighed barely 5 pounds, and felt his entire world reorganize itself around her existence. Sarah had lasted 9 months after that. Ryan didn't blame her, not really. She'd been 20 years old, drowning in postpartum depression and student debt and the suffocating reality of a life she'd never chosen. One morning he'd woken up to find half the closet empty and a note on the kitchen counter. I can't do this. I'm sorry. She's better off with you. That had been 5.5 years ago. Ryan had heard through mutual friends that Sarah was living in Seattle now, working in marketing, engaged to someone with a stable job and a condo overlooking the water. He was happy for her, in a distant sort of way. She sent a birthday card to Mia every year with a check for $50 inside, and sometimes Ryan wondered if she ever thought about the daughter she'd left behind, if she ever regretted her choice. But mostly, he didn't think about Sarah at all. There wasn't time. Daddy! Mia's voice pulled him back to the present. The castle fell down. Did the dragon win? No, the princess is rebuilding it, but she needs help. Ryan smiled, wrapped the sandwich in plastic wrap, and added an apple and a juice box to Mia's lunch bag. Tomorrow, he'd be at a job site in Hillsboro for 12 hours, breathing sawdust and running on coffee and whatever protein bars he could eat between measurements. But tonight, he was a supporting character in his daughter's cardboard kingdom. The princess's chief royal engineer reporting for duty, he announced, moving back into the living room. Mia beamed at him. You have to bow first. Ryan dropped to one knee with exaggerated formality. Your Highness, I am at your service. The next hour passed in the comfortable rhythm of their evening routine, rebuilding the castle, bath time complete with rubber ducks and Mia's ongoing saga about a shark named Gerald, brushing teeth while Ryan made sound effects for each tooth. This one's the noisy neighbor, this one's shy, and finally, the holy ritual of bedtime stories. Mia's corner of the apartment was small but carefully curated. Ryan had built her a bookshelf out of reclaimed wood from a demolition job, painted it purple because purple was her favorite color that month, and filled it with library books and secondhand finds. Her bed was a twin mattress on a simple frame he'd constructed himself, covered with a quilt that Marcus's mother had made when Mia was born. Glow-in-the-dark stars covered the ceiling, arranged in constellations Ryan had looked up online to make sure they were accurate. "Which story tonight?" Ryan asked, settling onto the edge of the mattress. Mia was already under the covers, her stuffed elephant clutched against her chest. "The one about the girl who builds a rocket ship." "Again? We've read that one 4 nights in a row." "It's the best one." Ryan couldn't argue with that logic. He pulled the book from the shelf, a worn picture book about a girl who wanted to see the stars and built a spacecraft out of things she found in her backyard, and opened to the first page. Mia knew the story so well she mouthed along with some of the words, her eyelids growing heavy halfway through. By the time the book's protagonist reached Mars, Mia was asleep, her breathing soft and even. Ryan sat there for a moment, just watching her. The streetlight outside filtered through the thin curtain, casting everything in amber shadows. Mia's face was peaceful, completely unaware of bills and schedules and all the things her father juggled to keep this small, safe world intact. "I love you, kiddo," Ryan whispered, pressing a kiss to her forehead, "more than all the stars in all the galaxies." He stood carefully, trying not to disturb her, and pulled the door halfway closed. The apartment was quiet now, just the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic on the street below. Ryan moved through the space, turning off lights, checking that the door was locked, setting his alarm for 4:30 a.m. His mattress was already set up in the living room. He'd learned early on that trying to fold and unfold it every night was an exercise in futility. Ryan changed into the sweatpants he slept in, plugged his phone in to charge, and lay down with a heaviness that went beyond physical exhaustion. This was his life. Wake up before dawn, get Mia fed and dressed and dropped off, work until his hands cramped and his back ached, pick Mia up, come home, be present for her evening, collapse into bed, repeat. Weekends were for laundry and groceries and whatever maintenance jobs he could pick up for extra cash. There was no room for dating, no energy for romance, no space in his carefully balanced equation for another variable. Ryan closed his eyes and let the familiar exhaustion pull him under. Tomorrow would be long, but the overtime pay would be worth it. Everything was worth it, as long as Mia had what she needed. He was asleep in minutes, dreamless and deep. The alarm at 4:30 came like a physical assault. Ryan's hand shot out on instinct, silencing the sound before it could wake Mia. The apartment was still dark, the world outside not yet ready for consciousness. He lay there for 30 seconds, gathering the will to move, then forced himself vertical. The morning routine was executed in near silence. Shower and water that took its full 4.5 minutes to warm up. Instant coffee that tasted like burnt rubber but delivered caffeine. 2 pieces of toast that he ate standing at the counter while scrolling through his phone. Marcus had texted again with the job site address and a note that the client wanted the work done with minimal noise because he worked from home. At 4:45, Ryan gently woke Mia. She was groggy and confused, the way kids always were when roused before dawn, but she didn't complain. She'd been through this enough times to know the drill. "Arms up," Ryan murmured, helping her into clothes he'd laid out the night before. "We're having an adventure this morning." "Is it still nighttime?" Mia asked, her voice thick with sleep. "Just barely. The sun's getting ready to wake up too." He carried her to the car, a 15-year-old Honda Civic that had been old when he bought it and was now held together mostly through Ryan's stubborn refusal to accept that it might die. Mia fell back asleep in her car seat before they'd even left the parking lot, her head lolling against the side padding. Marcus's sister lived in a small house in southeast Portland, the kind of neighborhood where people actually knew their neighbors and kids played in the streets during summer. Ryan pulled up at 5:10, right on schedule. Elena was already waiting at the door, wrapped in a bathrobe and holding a cup of coffee. "You're a lifesaver," Ryan said quietly, lifting a still sleeping Mia from the car seat. "Bring her in," Elena said, holding the door open. "Marcus told me you got the Hillsborough job. That lawyer's a piece of work, fair warning, but he pays on time." "I'll take what I can get." Elena led him to a small bedroom where she kept a daybed for early drop-offs. Ryan laid Mia down, covering her with a blanket, brushing her hair back from her face. She stirred, but didn't wake. "I'll pick her up by 8:30 tonight," Ryan said, following Elena back to the living room. "Maybe 9 if traffic's bad. Whenever you get here, you know I don't mind." "I know, but I owe you dinner or something. You've been watching her a lot lately." Elena waved him off. "Marcus pays me. And anyway, Mia's a sweetheart, easiest kid I've got most days." Ryan wanted to argue, wanted to insist that he needed to do something more to show his appreciation, but Elena was already ushering him toward the door with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd been running a daycare for a decade. "Go," she said. "Traffic's going to be hell getting to Hillsborough. I'll see you tonight." The drive west was exactly as miserable as predicted. Ryan merged onto Highway 26 into a river of taillights, the sky slowly lightening from black to gray to the flat, colorless dawn that characterized October in Portland. He used the time to mentally review the job specs Marcus had sent. Full basement finish, drywall already up. They were handling trim and paint and the detail work that would make the space look intentional rather than slapped together. The client's house was in one of those Hillsborough developments where every home looks subtly identical, variations on a theme of beige siding and two-car garages. Ryan pulled up at 5:58 to find Marcus's truck already in the driveway, along with 2 other vehicles he recognized from previous jobs. Marcus met him at the door, a tall black man in his mid-30s with the kind of permanent smile that made clients trust him instantly. "My finish wizard arrives." "Your severely undercaffeinated finish wizard," Ryan corrected, following Marcus through a pristine main floor toward the basement stairs. "This place is nice. Wait till you see what he wants done downstairs. Man's got champagne taste and is actually willing to pay for it." The basement was massive, easily 1,000 square feet, with high ceilings that had required special permits. The drywall was indeed already installed, taped, and ready for paint. But the trim work was going to be intensive, crown molding throughout, wainscoting on 2 walls, custom built-ins around an entertainment center, and baseboards that needed to account for several architectural quirks where the foundation didn't meet the framing at standard angles. "Jesus," Ryan breathed, setting his tool bag down. "How'd you bid this?" "Very carefully," Marcus said. "You're on crown molding and the built-ins. Danny's got baseboards, Carlos is painting. Client wants it done by Sunday night, which gives us today and tomorrow, plus Sunday if we need it. Sunday's Mia's day." "I know, that's why I'm hoping we don't need it. But the money's good enough that if we do, we'll figure it out," Ryan finished. He wasn't going to promise away his daughter's time, but he also wasn't going to pretend he could afford to turn down this kind of pay. They worked through the morning in the focused silence of professionals who'd collaborated enough times to develop a rhythm. Ryan measured twice, cut once, used a laser level to mark his guidelines, and began the meticulous process of installing crown molding that would meet at inside and outside corners with a kind of precision that separated adequate work from craftsmanship. The client appeared around noon, a man in his early 40s wearing expensive athleisure and an expression that suggested he'd never done manual labor in his life. He walked through the space nodding, making non-committal sounds, then stopped to watch Ryan work for several minutes. "You're very precise," the man observed. Ryan didn't look up from the corner he was coping. "Crown molding shows every mistake. Better to take the time now than have to redo it later." "Marcus said you were the best finish carpenter he'd ever worked with." "Marcus likes to exaggerate." "I don't think so." The client paused. "You do side jobs?" Ryan set down his coping saw and finally made eye contact. "Depends on the job. I've got a friend in Lake Oswego who's renovating a master bathroom. High-end materials. Wants someone detail-oriented. I could give him your number." It was the kind of offer Ryan couldn't afford to dismiss, even if it meant adding more hours to an already overloaded schedule. I'd appreciate that. The client nodded, apparently satisfied, and disappeared back upstairs. Marcus caught Ryan's eye from across the room and grinned. Referrals from clients like this could mean the difference between scraping by and actually building some savings. The afternoon bled into evening. At 7 p.m., Ryan's hands were cramping and his shoulders ached from the overhead work, but the crown molding was nearly complete. He stepped back to survey his progress, checking sight lines and corners, looking for any gaps or inconsistencies that would haunt him later. "Looking good," Marcus said, appearing at his elbow. "You should probably head out. It's almost 7:30. Ryan checked his phone. 7:28, and a text from Elena sent an hour ago. "Mia's asking when you'll be here. No rush, just so you know." "Yeah," Ryan said, already starting to pack up his tools. "I'll be back tomorrow morning?" 6 a.m. We'll finish strong. The drive back across Portland took 40 minutes in evening traffic. Ryan's mind was already shifting gears from work mode to dad mode, running through the evening checklist. Pick up Mia, get home, quick dinner, bath if there was time, definitely a story, bed by 9:30 at the latest. He pulled up to Elena's house at 8:15. Mia was waiting in the living room, visible through the front window, and her face lit up the moment she saw the car. By the time Ryan made it to the front door, she was already there, launching herself at his legs with the full-body enthusiasm of a 6-year-old who'd been waiting for this moment all day. "Daddy!" "Hey, kiddo." Ryan scooped her up, groaning theatrically. "When did you get so heavy? Did Elena feed you rocks?" "She made mac and cheese," Mia reported, her arms tight around his neck. "The good kind with breadcrumbs on top. And we made pictures with glitter." "Glitter, huh?" Ryan looked over Mia's head at Elena, who was standing in the doorway with an apologetic expression. "Should I be worried about my car?" "Most of it's contained to her backpack," Elena said. "Most of it." Ryan set Mia down to collect her things, the backpack, her lunch bag, a drawing she insisted he see immediately. He settled up with Elena, handing over cash that represented a concerning percentage of what he'd earned today, and made it back to the car with Mia chattering about her day, about the other kids in daycare, about how she'd defended the castle they'd built from some younger kids who wanted to knock it down. "Sounds like you were very brave," Ryan said, buckling her into her car seat. "I told them builders work hard and you can't just destroy stuff. You taught me that." Something warm expanded in Ryan's chest. "I did, didn't I? You teach me lots of things." "Well, you're a good student." The apartment felt smaller than usual when they got home. Or maybe Ryan was just more tired than usual. He microwaved chicken nuggets and mixed vegetables that he knew Mia would protest, but eat anyway, and they sat at their small table while she narrated her entire day in exhaustive detail. "And then Marcus called," Mia said, dipping a nugget in ketchup with surgical precision. "And Elena let me talk to him, and he said you were building something really fancy." "Pretty fancy," Ryan agreed. "Crown molding." "What's that?" "It's the trim that goes where the walls meet the ceiling, makes everything look finished and nice." Mia considered this. "Like when you cut the crusts off my sandwich?" Ryan laughed, the sound surprising him with its genuineness. "Yeah, exactly like that. It's the little details that matter." After dinner, they were both too tired for a bath. Ryan let it slide. One night wouldn't kill her, and they moved straight into bedtime routine. Mia brushed her teeth while Ryan tidied the apartment, a task that took approximately 3 minutes given how small the space was. Then it was story time again, the same rocket ship book, and Ryan's voice grew softer with each page as he felt the day's exhaustion finally catching up with him. "Daddy?" Mia said sleepily when the story was done and Ryan was tucking her in. "Are you happy?" The question caught him off guard. "Of course I'm happy, kiddo. Why?" "Emma's dad always smiles a lot, and you look tired." Ryan sat on the edge of her bed, choosing his words carefully. "I am tired sometimes, but that doesn't mean I'm not happy. You make me very, very happy." "But wouldn't you be happier if you had someone like Emma's mom, someone to help?" And there it was again, that same vein of questioning from earlier, except now with a sharper edge. Ryan smoothed Mia's hair back from her forehead, his hand gentle. "Listen to me," he said softly. "You and me, we're a team, the best team there is. And yeah, maybe someday there might be someone else who joins our team. But right now, this is perfect. You're perfect. Don't ever think you're not enough, okay? Mia's eyes were already closing. Okay, Daddy. I love you to the moon and back. And to all the stars, she mumbled, the last part of their nightly ritual. Ryan waited until her breathing evened out before standing. He pulled the door half closed and moved through the apartment one more time, making sure everything was ready for another early morning. His phone showed 11:30 p.m. 4:30 would come brutally fast. But as he finally lay down on his own mattress, staring at the ceiling where no glow-in-the-dark stars kept him company, Mia's question echoed in his mind. Wouldn't you be happier? The honest answer was complicated. Would help make things easier? Absolutely. Would it be nice to have another adult to share the burden with, to talk to at the end of long days, to simply exist beside in the quiet moments? Of course. But Ryan had learned the hard way that wanting something and being ready for it were two entirely different things. Dating required time he didn't have. It required emotional energy he'd already allocated to keeping himself and Mia afloat. It required vulnerability and trust and the willingness to let someone into the small, carefully balanced world he'd constructed. And what if it didn't work out? What if Mia got attached to someone who left? What if Ryan opened himself up to that kind of hurt again and couldn't recover this time? No. It was simpler this way. Safer. Just him and Mia against the world, exactly the way it had been for 5.5 years. Ryan closed his eyes and willed sleep to come. Tomorrow was another long day, another chance to prove he could handle this alone. He had no idea that in less than 24 hours, a routine walk home would turn into something that would challenge every wall he'd built, every assumption he'd made about what his life could be. But tonight, in the darkness of his small apartment, Ryan Hale was just a tired single father who loved his daughter more than anything in the world and believed that had to be enough. It would have to be enough. It was all he knew how to give. Awesome. Friday arrived with the same pre-dawn alarm, the same rushed morning routine. But Marcus texted at 5 a.m. Client move timeline up. Need you there by 5:30. Bring coffee. Ryan made it to Hillsborough by 5:40, armed with a thermos of terrible instant coffee and the grim determination of someone running on 5 hours of sleep. The work was intense, requiring the kind of focus that made hours disappear. He lost himself in the precision of measuring and cutting, in the satisfaction of joints that met perfectly, in the tangible proof that his hands could create something beautiful out of raw materials. They broke for lunch at 1 p.m. Ryan ate a protein bar in his car and checked his phone to find a message from the Lake Oswego client the homeowner had mentioned. Got your number from Jeff Paulson, interested in discussing a bathroom reno. Available for a site visit Sunday afternoon? Sunday. Mia's day. The day they usually spent at the park, or the library, or just being lazy together at home. Ryan stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back. What time Sunday? 2 p.m. Work? He could make that work. Take Mia to the park in the morning, do the site visit in the afternoon, be back by dinner. It would be tight, but the potential income from a Lake Oswego bathroom renovation could cover 2 months of rent. 2 p.m. works. Send me the address. When they finally wrapped for the day at 7:30 p.m., Ryan's entire body ached with the particular soreness that came from overhead work. But the basement looked incredible. The crown molding created clean lines that made the space feel intentional and expensive, exactly what the client had paid for. We'll finish tomorrow, Marcus said, clapping Ryan on the shoulder. But seriously, man, beautiful work. This is the kind of stuff that gets people talking. Ryan just nodded, too tired for words. He made it to Elena's by 8:15 again, collected a delighted Mia who insisted on showing him a painting she'd made of their apartment, and drove home through Friday night traffic with his daughter singing along to pop songs on the radio. The weekend stretched ahead with its usual list of obligations: laundry, groceries, the Lake Oswego site visit, and whatever precious free time he could carve out to actually spend with Mia. Just another week in the life of Ryan Hale, single father and Finnish carpenter, too busy surviving to think about what else life might offer. He had no way of knowing that the following evening, walking home from a hardware store run after Mia was asleep, and the babysitter was watching TV in his living room, his carefully constructed world was about to tilt on its axis. No way of knowing that red and blue lights were about to change everything. The hardware store run should have taken 15 minutes. Ryan needed wood glue and sandpaper for a side project he'd promised to finish over the weekend, a small bookshelf for one of Marcus's regular clients. Simple stuff. In and out. But the store's card reader had malfunctioned, forcing everyone to pay cash, and Ryan had to wait while the teenager behind the counter counted out change with the speed of continental drift. By the time he made it back outside, the October evening had fully surrendered to darkness, and a light rain had started to fall. Ryan pulled his jacket hood up and started the walk back to his apartment. It was only 6 blocks, and he'd left Mia with Mrs. Chen from 3B, a retired teacher who sometimes babysat when Ryan needed to run quick errands. The arrangement worked because Mrs. Chen genuinely liked Mia, and because Ryan paid her in a combination of cash and minor repairs around her apartment. The streets were quiet for a Friday night. Most people already settled into wherever they were spending their evening. Ryan's mind was already home, mentally reviewing the list of things he needed to accomplish before Sunday's site visit. He'd need to press his one good button-down shirt, make sure his work portfolio was updated, maybe watch a few YouTube videos about high-end bathroom finishes so he could speak intelligently about... The patrol car appeared out of nowhere, lights erupting in a cascade of red and blue that turned the wet street into a disco of law enforcement. Ryan's heart lurched into his throat as the vehicle pulled up beside him, and a voice crackled through the external speaker. "Sir, stop where you are and keep your hands visible." Ryan froze. His first thought was absurdly practical, the hardware store bag. He was holding a bag from a hardware store, and his other hand was in his jacket pocket because it was cold. Slowly, carefully, he removed his hand from his pocket and raised both arms slightly, the bag swinging from his fingers. The patrol car door opened and an officer stepped out. Even in the distorted light, Ryan could see she was young, probably close to his age, with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun and an expression that managed to be both professional and somehow gentle. Her hand rested on her service weapon, not drawing it but making its presence known. "Sir, I need you to set the bag down and keep your hands where I can see them." Ryan's mouth had gone dry. "What's this about?" "Set the bag down, please." Her voice was calm, controlled, the tone of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Ryan bent slowly and set the hardware store bag on the sidewalk. The wood glue and sandpaper suddenly felt incriminating, though he couldn't articulate why. When he straightened, his hands were trembling slightly. The officer moved closer, her eyes scanning him with an intensity that made Ryan feel transparent. She was shorter than he'd initially thought, maybe 5'6", but she carried herself with the kind of confidence that made height irrelevant. "I'm Officer Cruz," she said. "We had a report of a theft in progress at a convenience store 3 blocks from here. Suspect is a white male, late 20s, dark jacket, jeans, approximately 6 feet tall." Ryan felt his stomach drop. "I was at the hardware store. I have a receipt." "I'm going to need to see some ID." Ryan's wallet was in his back pocket. He started to reach for it, then stopped, suddenly hyper-aware of every action, every movement that might be misinterpreted. "My wallet's in my back pocket. Is it okay if I—" "Slowly," Officer Cruz said. Ryan extracted his wallet with exaggerated care and handed over his driver's license. Officer Cruz examined it with a small flashlight, her expression neutral. The rain was picking up, and Ryan could feel it soaking through his jacket, cold water trickling down the back of his neck. "Ryan Hale," she read. "This address current?" "Yes, ma'am. I live about 4 blocks from here. I was just grabbing supplies from the hardware store and heading home." "You said you have a receipt?" Ryan gestured toward the bag on the ground. "It's in there." Officer Cruz crouched and carefully opened the bag, extracting the receipt and examining it with the same thorough attention she'd given his ID. Ryan watched her, trying to read her expression and finding nothing. She was good at this, he realized, good at being unreadable. After what felt like an hour but was probably less than 2 minutes, Officer Cruz straightened and handed his license back. "The timing doesn't match. The robbery was called in 8 minutes ago, and this receipt is time-stamped from 23 minutes ago." Ryan felt the tension in his shoulders ease slightly. "So I can go?" But Officer Cruz didn't move. She was studying him now with an expression that had shifted from professional assessment to something Ryan couldn't quite identify. Curiosity, maybe. Or calculation. "You live alone?" she asked. The question was so unexpected that Ryan almost laughed. "What?" "It's just—" Officer Cruz paused, and for the first time her professional mask slipped slightly. "This is going to sound strange, but you're not married, right? No ring, no mention of a partner when you said you were heading home." Ryan's confusion was complete. "I don't understand what that has to do with—" "Nothing. It has nothing to do with the stop." Officer Cruz seemed to be having an internal argument with herself. "Look, I stopped you because you matched a description. You've been cleared, but I'm going to be completely unprofessional for about 30 seconds, and then you can file a complaint about me if you want." "A complaint about what?" Officer Cruz took a breath, and Ryan saw the exact moment she made whatever decision she was wrestling with. "Are you single?" The question hit Ryan like a physical thing. He actually took a step backward, nearly slipping on the wet pavement. "I'm sorry, what?" "I'm asking if you're seeing anyone. Dating, involved, whatever term you prefer." Officer Cruz's cheeks had flushed slightly, visible even in the artificial light. "Because I just pulled you over for matching a suspect description, which was clearly my mistake, and I'd like to buy you coffee as an apology. If you're not involved with anyone, which is absolutely not protocol and definitely something I could get reprimanded for, so feel free to say no and forget this entire conversation happened." Ryan's brain had stalled out somewhere around "buy you coffee." He was standing on a street corner in the rain, soaking wet, having just been stopped by police, and now said police officer was asking him out. The absurdity of it all made him wonder if he'd fallen asleep on his mattress, and this was some kind of stress-induced fever dream. "I have a daughter," Ryan heard himself say. Officer Cruz's expression shifted. "Oh, you're married?" "No, single, but I have a 6-year-old daughter." "Okay." Officer Cruz seemed to be processing this information, recalibrating. "Does that mean no to coffee, or—" "Why are you asking me this?" Ryan interrupted. The question came out more bewildered than confrontational. "You pulled me over. You thought I was a robbery suspect. This doesn't happen." "I know it doesn't happen. Trust me. I know." Officer Cruz ran a hand over her face, and Ryan caught a glimpse of something beneath the professional composure. Exhaustion, maybe. Or the same kind of loneliness he saw in his own mirror every morning. "I'm going to be honest with you, Ryan. Can I call you Ryan?" "Sure." "I've been a cop for 7 years. I've pulled over hundreds of people. I have never, ever asked anyone out during a traffic stop or any other professional interaction. But you seemed genuinely terrified when I stopped you, not angry or defensive or any of the things people usually are. And when you talked about heading home, you sounded like someone who actually had something to go home to, not just an empty apartment and a TV dinner. Which is stupid reasoning, I know, but it made me think maybe you're the kind of person who doesn't play games or waste time, and I'm really tired of games and wasted time." Ryan stood there, rain running down his face, trying to reconcile this speech with the controlled professional who'd stopped him 5 minutes ago. Officer Cruz looked equally surprised by her own words, as if they'd escaped without permission. "I should go," Ryan said finally. "My daughter's with a babysitter, and I told her I'd only be 20 minutes. "Right, of course." Officer Cruz stepped back, her professional mask sliding into place like a shield. "I apologize for the stop and for the inappropriate request. You're free to go." Ryan picked up his hardware store bag. His hands were still shaking, but now he couldn't tell if it was from the adrenaline of being stopped or from something else entirely. He made it 3 steps before stopping and turning back. Officer Cruz was already at her patrol car, hand on the door handle. "Coffee," Ryan called out. She turned. "What?" "You said coffee. As an apology." Ryan had no idea what he was doing, what he was thinking, why words were leaving his mouth without consulting his brain first. "When were you thinking?" Officer Cruz's expression transformed. Not quite a smile, but something close. Something that suggested she knew how to smile but had forgotten the mechanics. "When do you have free time?" "I don't. But Sunday afternoon I have a site visit in Lake Oswego at 2. I could do 11 a.m. maybe?" There's a cafe near my apartment that doesn't completely suck. Grounds on Morrison. You know it? I patrol this neighborhood 4 nights a week. I know every coffee shop within a 6-block radius. Officer Cruz pulled out her phone. Give me your number. Ryan recited it, watching as she typed it in. His phone buzzed a moment later with a text. This is Officer Cruz. Elena. My name's Elena. Elena, Ryan repeated, the name feeling strange in his mouth, foreign and familiar at once. Sunday at 11, Elena said. Grounds on Morrison. I'll be the one not in uniform. And I'll be the one trying to remember how normal people have conversations that don't start with being suspected of robbery. That got an actual smile, brief but genuine. Fair enough. Go home to your daughter, Ryan. Ryan nodded and started walking. He made it half a block before his legs started feeling unsteady, and he had to stop and lean against a building. His phone was still in his hand, Elena's text still on the screen. He stared at it, trying to process what had just happened. A police officer had stopped him, had asked him out, had looked at him with an expression that suggested she understood exactly what it was like to be tired in a way that sleep didn't fix. And he'd said yes to coffee, which was insane, because he didn't date. He didn't have time to date. He didn't have the emotional bandwidth to date, but he'd said yes anyway. Ryan pushed off from the building and continued home, his mind churning. Mrs. Chen would be wondering where he was. Mia would be asleep or close to it. The bookshelf wouldn't build itself. Sunday's site visit required preparation. The list of practical concerns was endless, each one a perfectly valid reason to text Elena back and cancel, to explain that he'd made a mistake, that his life didn't have room for this kind of complication. By the time he reached his apartment building, Ryan had composed and deleted 17 different texts. He settled on nothing, climbing the stairs to 3B in silence. Mrs. Chen opened the door before he could knock. There you are. I was about to call. Sorry, I got held up. Ryan couldn't quite meet her eyes, afraid that what had just happened was somehow written on his face. How was Mia? Perfect angel, as always. Asleep about 20 minutes ago. Mrs. Chen gathered her knitting bag and sweater. You look rattled. Long day. Mrs. Chen's expression suggested she didn't quite believe him, but she didn't press. Same rate as usual? Ryan handed over cash and watched her shuffle toward the stairs. Then he let himself into his apartment, moving quietly through the darkened space. Mia's corner was peaceful, her breathing soft and even, one arm thrown over her stuffed elephant. Ryan changed out of his wet clothes and sat on his mattress, phone in hand. Elena's text was still there, still real. He typed, "Thanks for not arresting me." The response came 30 seconds later. Thanks for not filing a complaint about harassment. Is it harassment if I said yes? Legally, no. Professionally, probably. Ryan found himself smiling at his phone, which was ridiculous. He was 28 years old, not a teenager with a crush. But there was something about the directness of Elena's texts, the way she didn't hide behind emojis or games, that felt refreshing. See you Sunday, he typed. Sunday, she confirmed. Then, after a pause, for what it's worth, I really am sorry about stopping you. That part was genuinely awful timing. Could have been worse, could have actually been a robbery suspect. True. Sleep well, Ryan. Ryan set his phone down and lay back on his mattress, staring at the ceiling. Sleep well. As if that was possible now, with his mind running through 1,000 scenarios, 1,000 ways this could go wrong or right, or nowhere at all. What was he doing? He had a daughter, a job that barely covered expenses, a life balanced so precariously that adding any new element felt like inviting disaster. Elena was a police officer, which meant shift work and stress and a job that came with its own set of complications. They'd met because she'd stopped him on the street, suspected him of a crime. This wasn't a meet cute. This was a recipe for awkwardness at best, disaster at worst. But she'd looked at him with those dark, tired eyes and asked about coffee, and something in Ryan's chest had responded before his brain could intervene. Something that recognized a kindred spirit, someone else who understood what it meant to carry weight that never quite set down. Ryan closed his eyes and tried to sleep. Tomorrow was Saturday. Groceries, laundry, the bookshelf project. Mia would want to go to the park if the rain stopped. There were a dozen practical things that required his attention, none of which included obsessing over a coffee date that probably wouldn't lead anywhere anyway. But as sleep finally pulled him under, Ryan's last conscious thought was of Elena's smile, brief and genuine, and the way her voice had softened when she told him to go home to his daughter. Saturday morning arrived with Mia bouncing on Ryan's mattress at 7:30, her hair a wild tangle, and her voice bright with the kind of energy only children possessed before 9 a.m. "Daddy, it stopped raining. Can we go to the park? Please, please, please." Ryan groaned and pulled the blanket over his head. "What time is it?" "Park time." "That's not a real time." Mia tugged the blanket down, her face inches from his. "Please?" There was no universe in which Ryan could resist that expression. "Okay, but first breakfast. And you have to let me have at least 1 cup of coffee." "Deal!" They went through the morning routine at a more leisurely pace than weekdays allowed. Ryan made pancakes from a mix, while Mia set the table with exaggerated care, placing each fork and knife with the precision of someone performing surgery. The apartment filled with the smell of butter and artificial maple syrup, and for a moment, Ryan let himself just exist in the simplicity of it. "Daddy," Mia said around a mouthful of pancake, "can we bring bread for the ducks?" "The sign at the park says not to feed ducks bread. It's not good for them." "But they like it." "Just because something likes something doesn't mean it's good for it." Ryan pointed his fork at her plate. "Kind of like how you like candy for breakfast, but I make you eat pancakes instead." Mia considered this logic, then brightened. "Can we bring peas? The sign says peas are okay." "We can bring peas." They made it to the park by 9:30, armed with a Ziploc bag of frozen peas that were slowly thawing in the October sun. The park was small but well-maintained, with a playground that had recently been updated and a pond that attracted ducks and the occasional ambitious goose. Mia ran straight for the swings, her jacket flapping behind her like wings. Ryan settled onto a bench, coffee thermos in hand, and watched his daughter pump her legs with fierce determination. Other parents dotted the playground, mostly mothers, Ryan noticed, though there was one dad pushing a toddler on the baby swings and looking like he might fall asleep standing up. His phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "How'd the hardware run go last night?" Ryan hesitated, then typed, "Got the stuff. Also got stopped by cops." The response was immediate. "What? Wrong place, wrong time. Matched a suspect description. Got cleared. Jesus, man. You okay?" Ryan thought about Elena's smile, about coffee on Sunday, about the way his stomach had flipped when she'd asked if he was single. "Yeah, I'm okay." He spent the next 2 hours at the park, pushing Mia on the swings, helping her across the monkey bars, and supervising the great duck feeding expedition that resulted in every duck in the pond converging on them like a feathered mob. Mia was delighted. Ryan was pretty sure they'd violated at least 3 park regulations. By noon, they were both tired and hungry. Ryan stopped at a grocery store on the way home, Mia riding in the cart and helping by adding items she deemed essential. Cookies, more cookies, a magazine about horses, and a small succulent plant she insisted needed rescuing. "We can't save every plant in the store, kiddo." "But this one's looking at me." Ryan looked at the succulent. It was objectively not looking at anything. It was a plant. But Mia's expression was so earnest that he found himself adding it to the cart anyway, along with the actual groceries they needed. Back at the apartment, they had grilled cheese for lunch and spent the afternoon in comfortable domesticity. Ryan worked on the bookshelf while Mia played with her castle and narrated increasingly elaborate stories involving princesses, dragons, and apparently now a magical plant that could grant wishes. His phone stayed silent. No texts from Elena. Ryan told himself that was normal, that they'd agreed to Sunday, and there was no reason for her to reach out before then. But he still checked his phone more often than usual, feeling absurd each time. Evening came with its usual routines: dinner, bath, stories. But when Ryan tucked Mia in, she looked up at him with those gray eyes that were so much like his own and asked, "Are you happy, Daddy?" It was the second time she'd asked that question in a week. Ryan sat on the edge of her bed, choosing his words carefully. "What makes you ask that?" "You smiled a lot today, more than usual." Ryan felt his chest tighten. How was his 6-year-old so perceptive? I'm always happy when I'm with you. I know, but today you seemed happy. Like something good happened. Something good did happen. I got to spend the whole day with my favorite person in the world. Mia giggled, but her expression remained serious. Is it okay if other things make you happy too? Not just me? Of course it is. Why would you think otherwise? Because you work a lot and then come home and you're tired and we do our stuff and that's it. You don't really do other things. Ryan smoothed her hair back from her forehead, his throat tight. Would it bother you if I did other things sometimes? Like what? I don't know. Maybe have coffee with a friend or take a break to do something just for me. Mia was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then, Emma's dad plays basketball on Saturdays. Her mom says it's important for him to have his own time. Emma's mom sounds smart. So you should have your own time too. Maybe I should. Ryan kissed her forehead. But right now my time is reading you a story. What'll it be tonight? The rocket ship one. Again? It's still the best one. Ryan read the familiar story, his voice soft in the dimness of Mia's corner. By the time the cardboard rocket reached Mars, she was asleep, one hand curled around her elephant's trunk. Ryan stayed for a moment, just watching her breathe, this small, perfect human who somehow understood that he needed permission to be something beyond her father. Sunday morning arrived with anxiety Ryan hadn't expected. The site visit in Lake Oswego wasn't until 2, and coffee with Elena was at 11, which left the morning free for last-minute panic about both events. He'd laid out clothes the night before, his good jeans and a button-down shirt that was professional enough for the client meeting but casual enough for coffee. His work portfolio was updated, his phone charged, his thermos filled. Everything was prepared except his mental state. "You look fancy," Mia observed over breakfast. "Is it for your work thing?" "Partly." "What's the other part?" Ryan added milk to his coffee, not meeting her eyes. "I'm meeting someone for coffee first. A friend." "What friend?" "A new friend." Mia's eyes went wide. "Like a date friend?" "How do you even know about dates? You're 6. Emma talks about dates. Her mom goes on dates sometimes with her dad. They call it date night. Ryan set his coffee down. This conversation was veering into territory he hadn't prepared for. It's just coffee, getting to know someone, that's all. But maybe it could be a date later? Maybe. I don't know, it's complicated. Mia nodded sagely, as if she understood complexity. Is she nice? I think so. I only met her for a few minutes. What's her name? Elena. That's a pretty name? Mia took a bite of cereal, chewing thoughtfully. You should bring her flowers. Emma's dad always brings flowers. I'm not bringing flowers to a coffee shop, kiddo. Why not? Because showing up to a first meeting with flowers felt presumptuous and overeager, and like something from a romantic comedy rather than real life. But Ryan didn't say that. Instead, because it's just coffee, low-key, casual. Mia shrugged, apparently satisfied. Okay, but if you like her, you should tell her. That's what the princess does in my stories. I'll keep that in mind. At 10:45, Ryan left Mia with Mrs. Chen again, promising he'd be back by 1:30 at the latest. The walk to Grounds on Morrison took 12 minutes, leaving him 3 minutes early and suddenly unsure whether arriving early made him seem eager or punctual. Elena was already there. She sat at a corner table near the window, dressed in jeans and a dark green sweater, her hair down instead of pulled back. Without the uniform and the authority it carried, she looked younger, more uncertain. Human in a way the officer from Friday night hadn't quite been. Ryan's heart was doing something complicated in his chest. He took a breath and walked over. Hey! Elena looked up and something in her expression eased. Relief, maybe. Hey, you came. You thought I wouldn't? Wasn't sure. Figured you might wake up and realize accepting a coffee invitation from a cop who stopped you on the street was moderately insane. Ryan sat down across from her. I considered it, but I've done crazier things. Like what? Like agreeing to become a single parent at 22. That got a small smile. How'd that go? Still figuring it out, but she's 6 now, so I must be doing something right. A barista appeared at their table, and they ordered black coffee for Ryan, a latte for Elena. The silence that followed wasn't quite awkward, but it carried the weight of two people who'd agreed to this meeting without really knowing what they were agreeing to. "So," Elena said finally, "this is weird, right? This is objectively weird." "Extremely weird," Ryan agreed. "I've never done this before." "Done what? Coffee?" "Dated. Not since—" He paused, unsure how much to share. "Not since my daughter's mom left. That was 5.5 years ago." Elena's expression shifted. Not pity, exactly. Something closer to understanding. "That's a long time." "Yeah, what about you?" The barista returned with their drinks, giving Elena a moment before she had to answer. She wrapped her hands around her mug, steam rising between them. "I was married," she said quietly. "My husband died 4 years ago. Firefighter. Structure fire went wrong." Ryan felt his chest constrict. Suddenly, the weariness he'd seen in Elena's eyes made terrible sense. "I'm sorry." "Thank you." Elena took a sip of her latte, her gaze distant. "I haven't really dated since. Tried a few times, but it always felt like I was just going through motions, like I was performing being ready instead of actually being ready. And now? Now I'm still not sure I'm ready. But I stopped you on Friday and you looked terrified, and somehow that made you seem real in a way most people don't. Does that make sense?" "Actually, yeah, it does." They talked for the next hour, the conversation flowing with surprising ease once they got past the initial weirdness. Elena told him about her 7 years on the force, about why she became a cop after losing her husband instead of running from anything related to public service. Ryan talked about construction, about the satisfaction of building things with his hands, about how fatherhood had rearranged his entire understanding of what mattered. "What's your daughter like?" Elena asked. Ryan's whole face changed when he smiled. "Smart. Too smart sometimes. She asks questions I don't have answers for. Like yesterday, she asked if I was happy." "What'd you tell her?" "That she makes me happy, which is true. But she called me on it, basically said it was okay if other things made me happy too." "Sounds like she's giving you permission." "I think she is, which is absurd because she's 6. "Maybe she sees something you don't." Ryan checked his phone, 12:40. Almost time to leave for Lake Oswego. The realization hit with a strange disappointment. He wasn't ready for this to end. "I have to go," he said reluctantly. "Site visit." "Right. You mentioned." Elena stood when he did, and they faced each other in the cafe with the awkwardness of two people navigating uncharted territory. "This was nice." "Yeah, it was. So do we. Should we do this again?" Ryan thought about Mia's words. "You should tell her." "I'd like to, if you would." "I would." Elena pulled out her phone. "Next week? I'm off Thursday evening." "Thursday works." They exchanged a few more texts to confirm details, and then Ryan was heading toward his car, his mind already split between the client meeting ahead and the hour he'd just spent learning about Elena Cruz. About how she took her coffee with exactly 2 sugars, how she'd wanted to be a lawyer before her husband died and becoming a cop felt like the only way to survive grief, how she lived alone in a condo with a balcony she never used because it reminded her too much of plans that would never happen. The Lake Oswego meeting went well. The client was impressed with Ryan's portfolio and wanted him to start the following week. The pay was exactly as good as anticipated, which meant Ryan could stop holding his breath every time an unexpected expense appeared. But as he drove back through Portland traffic, his mind kept returning to the cafe, to Elena's careful smile, to the way she'd understood without judgment what it meant to be not quite ready, but trying anyway. His phone buzzed at a red light. A text from Elena. "Thanks for coffee and for not being weird about the whole dead husband thing." Ryan typed back. "Thanks for not being weird about the whole single dad raising a kid alone thing. We're quite a pair." "Yeah, we really are." When Ryan picked up Mia from Mrs. Chen, his daughter took one look at his face and announced, "You like her." "What?" "Elena, you like her. You're smiling the happy way again." Ryan couldn't even deny it. "Maybe I do." "Good," Mia said matter-of-factly, taking his hand as they walked to their apartment. "You should be happy more." That night, after Mia was asleep and the apartment was quiet, Ryan lay on his mattress thinking about the risk he was taking, about how letting someone in meant vulnerability, meant the possibility of hurt, meant complicating the careful balance he'd maintained for years. But he was tired of just surviving, tired of coming home to silence, tired of believing that what he had was all he deserved. Elena had looked at him like she understood, like she was tired too, and maybe that was enough to start with, two tired people choosing to try anyway. Ryan closed his eyes and let himself imagine what Thursday might bring, what small steps forward might look like, what it might mean to finally believe that wanting more wasn't selfish or dangerous or impossible, just maybe possible after all. Thursday arrived wrapped in the kind of cold November rain that made Portland feel like it existed underwater. Ryan spent the day at the Lake Oswego bathroom renovation, pulling out old tile and making notes about plumbing that would need professional attention before he could start the finish work. His hands were raw by lunch, his back aching from the awkward angles, but the client had already paid half up front, and that money was currently sitting in Ryan's account like a small miracle. Marcus called around 3. "How's the fancy bathroom coming?" "Slow. They want heated floors, which means I need to coordinate with an electrician." "You sound stressed." "I'm fine." "You sure? Because you've been weird all week, distracted. You measured the same piece of trim 3 times yesterday." Ryan wiped dust from his face with the back of his hand. "I've got a thing tonight." "What kind of thing?" "A date thing." The silence on the other end lasted long enough that Ryan checked to make sure the call hadn't dropped. Then Marcus's laugh came through, loud and delighted. "Ryan Hale has a date. Someone alert the media. It's not that big a deal. Brother, you haven't been on a date since Mia was in diapers. This is absolutely a big deal. Who is she?" Ryan hesitated. "A cop." "A cop? How'd you meet a cop?" "She stopped me last Friday. Thought I matched a robbery suspect." Marcus's laughter intensified. "You're telling me you got pulled over and somehow turned that into a date? That's either the smoothest thing you've ever done or the weirdest meet-cute in history." "Definitely the second one." "Well, good luck, man. You deserve something good." Ryan ended the call and returned to demolition work, but his mind kept drifting to the evening ahead. Elena had suggested a small Italian place in her neighborhood, somewhere quiet where they could actually talk. Ryan had agonized over what to wear before settling on dark jeans and a sweater that didn't have paint stains. He'd arranged for Mrs. Chen to watch Mia until 9, which felt simultaneously too long and not long enough. At 5:30, he called it a day and headed home. The apartment was chaos when he arrived. Mia had built what appeared to be an entire city out of cardboard boxes and was in the middle of explaining a complex political situation between the box citizens and their neighbors, the throw pillows. "Daddy!" She launched herself at his legs. "You're home early. Got to clean up for tonight, remember?" "Oh yeah, your date with Elena." Mia's voice carried the kind of volume that definitely reached Mrs. Chen's apartment and possibly the entire floor. "Are you nervous?" "Why would I be nervous?" "Emma says her mom gets nervous before dates. She puts on fancy makeup and changes clothes like 100 times. "I'm not changing clothes 100 times. "But you're a little nervous." Ryan crouched down to Mia's level. "Maybe a little." "That's okay. It means you like her." Mia threw her arms around his neck. "I hope she's nice, and I hope she likes cardboard cities." "That's a pretty specific requirement. It's important, Daddy. Not everyone appreciates good architecture." Ryan showered quickly, the water pressure terrible, as always, and emerged to find Mia had laid out what she deemed appropriate date attire on his mattress. It was essentially what he'd already planned to wear, plus a tie she'd found somewhere. "No tie, kiddo." "But you want to look fancy." "I want to look like myself, just cleaned up a bit." Mia accepted this with a solemn nod. She watched him dress with the intensity of a fashion critic, offering commentary on everything from his sock choice to whether he should roll up his sleeves or leave them down. "Sleeves down," she decided. "It's cold outside." "Good thinking." At 6:15, Chen arrived to find Mia giving Ryan a final inspection. "You'll do," Mia announced. "But remember to smile and ask her questions about herself. That's what Emma says is polite." "When did you become a dating expert?" "I pay attention." Ryan kissed the top of her head. "I'll be back by 9. "You be good for Mrs. Chen." "I'm always good." "You're always something, that's for sure." The drive to Elena's neighborhood took 25 minutes through traffic that moved like cold honey. Ryan arrived at the restaurant 10 minutes early and sat in his car, hands gripping the steering wheel, wondering what he was doing. He was 28 years old with a 6-year-old daughter and a bank account that had only recently climbed above 4 digits. Elena was a police officer with a dead husband and grief she'd carried for 4 years. They'd met because she'd stopped him on the street. This was objectively insane. But then his phone buzzed with a text from Elena. "I'm here, corner booth." Corner, trying not to look like I'm freaking out. Ryan smiled despite his nerves and typed back, "On my way in, also freaking out. At least we're freaking out together." The restaurant was small and warm, the kind of place that had probably been family-owned for generations. Checkered tablecloths, candles and wine bottles, the smell of garlic and tomato sauce heavy in the air. Elena sat exactly where she'd said, in a corner booth, dressed in a dark blue sweater that made her eyes look almost black. She saw him and waved, the gesture somehow both confident and uncertain. "Hi," Ryan said, sliding into the booth across from her. "Hi." Elena's hands were wrapped around a glass of red wine. "I ordered already. Hope that's okay. I was nervous and needed something to do with my hands." "Completely understandable." A waiter appeared with menus and Ryan ordered a beer. Then they both stared at the menus like they contained secrets to the universe. The silence stretched just long enough to become uncomfortable before Elena set her menu down with a decisive thump. "Okay, we need to acknowledge that this is weird, right? We met under bizarre circumstances, we barely know each other, and we're both clearly terrified." Ryan set his own menu down. "Acknowledged. So maybe we just lean into the weirdness? Ask the questions people don't normally ask on first dates?" "What kind of questions?" Elena took a sip of wine. "Like why you really became a single dad. Not the surface story, the real one." The waiter returned with Ryan's beer. He took a long drink, buying time, deciding how honest to be. Then he thought about what Mia had said about being happy, and he chose honesty. Her mom left because she couldn't handle it. The reality of having a kid, of being tied down, of watching her entire life plan evaporate. I was angry at first, furious, but after a while I realized she did the brave thing. She knew she couldn't be what Mia needed, so she left instead of staying and resenting us both. That must have been terrifying, being alone with a baby. I was 22 and had no idea what I was doing. Still don't, most days. But Mia's amazing, and I can't imagine my life without her, so maybe Sarah did us both a favor. Do you ever hear from her? Birthday cards, $50 checks. She lives in Seattle now, engaged to someone stable. I hope she's happy. Elena nodded slowly. That's generous. Being able to hope she's happy. What's the alternative? Staying bitter? That doesn't help anyone. Ryan leaned forward. Your turn. Why'd you become a cop after losing your husband? Most people would run from anything that reminded them of what they lost. Elena's fingers traced the rim of her wine glass. Because running felt like erasing him. David was a firefighter because he believed in helping people and being useful. After he died, I was drowning in grief, and the only thing that made sense was trying to honor what he believed in. So I applied to the academy. Do you regret it? Sometimes. The job is hard, and it cost me in ways I didn't anticipate, but it also gave me structure when I needed it, purpose, something to get up for besides just surviving another day. They ordered food, pasta for Elena, chicken parmesan for Ryan, and the conversation shifted to safer territory. Elena told him about growing up in a big family in California, about how she'd moved to Portland for college and fallen in love with the rain. Ryan talked about construction, about the satisfaction of finish work, about how Mia had recently decided she wanted to be an astronaut veterinarian princess. That's a lot of jobs, Elena said, smiling. She's ambitious. I figure she'll narrow it down by high school. Or she'll find a way to do all three. Sounds like she takes after her dad in the stubborn department. I'm not stubborn. You've been a single parent for 5 years, working yourself to exhaustion to provide for your kid, and you're sitting here on a date despite being scared out of your mind. That's not stubborn? Ryan considered this. Okay, maybe a little stubborn. It's not a bad thing. Stubborn people survive. The food arrived and they ate slowly, the conversation flowing more easily now. Elena talked about the precinct, about the politics and the paperwork, and the occasional call that made the whole job worthwhile. Ryan described the Lake Oswego bathroom renovation, making her laugh with his impression of the client, explaining why the toilet paper holder needed to be at exactly 23 inches from the floor. "Do you ever get tired of people's weird demands?" Elena asked. "All the time. But weird demands pay the bills, so I smile and nod and install things at exactly 23 inches. Very diplomatic. I save my opinions for when they can't hear me." Elena laughed, the sound genuine and unguarded. Ryan felt something loosen in his chest, some tension he'd been carrying since he'd arrived. This was actually going well. They were actually having a good time. But then Elena's phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at it and her expression changed, something shuddering behind her eyes. "Everything okay?" Ryan asked. "Yeah, just a text from a coworker." But Elena's voice had gone flat, and she wasn't meeting his eyes. "You sure?" Elena set her phone face down on the table. "It's nothing, just precinct gossip." "About what?" "About me. About being seen having coffee with someone on Sunday." Elena's jaw was tight. Apparently it's news when I do anything that isn't work. Ryan felt cold settle in his stomach. "What kind of gossip?" "The usual. Questions about who you are, speculation about whether I'm ready to move on, a few people who think 4 years isn't long enough." Elena's hands were fists on the table. "It's stupid. I shouldn't care what they think." "But you do." "But I do." Elena looked at him finally, her eyes bright. "I've spent 4 years being David's widow. That's how people see me. And part of me is terrified that if I stop being that, if I let myself be something else, I'll lose the last connection I have to him." Ryan reached across the table, his hand covering hers. "You won't lose him. He's part of who you are. Being happy again doesn't erase that." "Logically, I know that. But grief isn't logical." "No, it's really not." They sat there in silence, Ryan's hand still on Elena's, the restaurant humming with other people's conversations around them. The waiter approached but seemed to sense the moment and veered away. Finally, Elena turned her hand over, her fingers interlacing with Ryan's. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "This is a terrible second date topic. We're leaning into the weirdness, remember? No surface stuff." "Still, you didn't sign up for my emotional baggage on a Thursday night." "Everyone's got baggage. Mine comes with a 6-year-old and a Honda Civic that might die any day. Yours comes with grief and a job that involves actual danger. We're both carrying stuff." Elena's smile was shaky but present. "When did you get so wise?" "I'm not wise. I'm just tired of pretending everything's fine when it's not." They finished dinner talking about lighter things, favorite movies, embarrassing childhood stories, the ongoing debate about whether Portland's rain was charming or just depressing. But something had shifted between them, some acknowledgement that they were both damaged in their own ways and choosing to show up anyway. Ryan paid despite Elena's protests, and they walked out into the November cold. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick and shining under streetlights. "I'm parked over there," Ryan said, gesturing vaguely. "I'm the other direction." They stood on the sidewalk, neither quite ready to leave. Ryan's heart was doing complicated things again, and he couldn't tell if it was fear or hope or some combination of both. "I had a really good time," Elena said. "Me too." "Even with the awkward grief talk?" "Especially with the awkward grief talk. It felt real." Elena stepped closer, close enough that Ryan could smell her perfume, something subtle and clean. "I want to see you again, but I need to be honest about something." Ryan's stomach dropped. "Okay?" "The gossip at work, it's going to get worse if we keep seeing each other. People are going to have opinions. And I'm not sure I'm strong enough to deal with that and all my own doubts at the same time." "So you're saying we should stop?" "No. I'm saying I'm scared and I don't know what I'm doing and I might be terrible at this. But I want to try anyway. If you're willing to be patient with me." Ryan thought about the past 5 years, about learning to be a father through trial and error, about all the times he'd been terrified and done it anyway. "I can be patient." "Yeah?" "Yeah." Elena reached up and kissed him, quick and soft, barely more than a brush of lips, but it sent electricity through Ryan's entire body, made his breath catch in his throat. "Thursday next week?" she asked, pulling back. Ryan's voice came out rough. Thursday next week. He watched her walk away, waiting until she'd rounded the corner before heading to his own car. His hands shook slightly as he started the engine, and he had to sit for a moment just breathing, processing what had just happened. Elena had kissed him, had told him she was scared but wanted to try, had chosen him despite the fear. Ryan's phone buzzed with a text from Mia, or more accurately, from Mrs. Chen using Mia's dictation. Did you have fun? Did you remember to smile? When can we meet her? He laughed and typed back, Yes, yes, and slow down, kiddo. The response was immediate. But I want to meet your girlfriend. She's not my girlfriend. We've been on 2 dates. But she could be your girlfriend? Ryan stared at his phone, at his daughter's enthusiastic optimism, and felt something warm expand in his chest. Could Elena be his girlfriend? Could this actually turn into something real? Maybe, he typed, but these things take time. How much time? I don't know. We'll see. I'm good at waiting, as long as it's not too long. Ryan smiled and started the drive home. The streets were mostly empty, Portland settling into its nighttime rhythm. He thought about Elena's kiss, about the way her hand had felt in his, about the raw honesty of their conversation. It had been terrifying and exhilarating and real in a way that nothing had been for years. When he picked Mia up from Mrs. Chen, his daughter took one look at his face and announced, It went good. Well, it went well. Same thing. Was she nice? Very nice. Did she ask about me? Ryan thought back through the evening. Actually, we talked about you quite a bit. I told her about your career plans. What career plans? Astronaut, veterinarian, princess. Mia giggled. That's not a real thing. You made it a real thing 2 weeks ago. They walked back to the apartment, Mia's hand in his, chattering about everything Mrs. Chen had let her do. But as Ryan tucked her into bed later, she got quiet. Daddy, are you going to keep seeing Elena? I think so, if that's okay with you. It's okay. Mia paused. But what if she doesn't like me? Ryan's heart clenched. Why wouldn't she like you? Because I'm weird and I talk too much, and I still sleep with my elephant. Those are all things that make you special, not weird. And anyone who doesn't appreciate how amazing you are doesn't deserve to be in our lives. But what if you like her, and she doesn't like me, and you have to choose? Ryan pulled Mia into a tight hug. That's not going to happen. You're the most important person in my world, always. Anyone who comes into our lives has to accept that you come first. No exceptions. Promise? Promise. Mia settled back into her pillows, apparently satisfied. Okay, then she can keep being your maybe girlfriend. Very generous of you. I know. After Mia fell asleep, Ryan lay on his own mattress thinking about her question. What if Elena didn't like Mia? What if they couldn't find a way to blend their lives? What if the logistics of dating as a single parent proved too complicated? But then he thought about Elena's honesty, about how she'd admitted her fears instead of hiding them, about the way she'd kissed him despite being terrified. That kind of courage deserved a chance. His phone buzzed one more time, a text from Elena. Thank you for tonight, for listening, for not running when I got weird. Thank you for getting weird. It was refreshing. Same time next week? It's a date. Officially my favorite words. Ryan set his phone aside and closed his eyes. Tomorrow would bring more work, more juggling, more of the constant balancing act that defined his life. But for the first time in years, he was looking forward to next Thursday with something that felt dangerously close to hope. The week that followed was a blur of work and anticipation. Ryan finished the demolition phase of the Lake Oswego bathroom and started the rebuild, coordinating with the electrician for the heated floors and making detailed plans for the custom tile work the client wanted. Marcus gave him 2 more side jobs, easy finish work that paid well, and Ryan found himself actually building savings for the first time in recent memory. But mostly, he thought about Elena. They texted throughout the week, small messages that felt like breadcrumbs of connection. Elena sent him a photo of a sunset from her patrol car with the caption, "Thought you might appreciate the pink sky." Ryan responded with a picture of Mia's latest cardboard creation, labeled Modern Art or Structural Disaster. You decide. Mia noticed the increased phone checking. Is that Elena? Maybe. You smile different when you text her. I do not. You do. It's like a secret smile. Ryan had no defense against this observation because it was probably true. Elena made him feel like he was remembering how to be a person separate from being a father, and that was both wonderful and terrifying. On Tuesday, Elena called instead of texting. Hey, this might be forward, but I'm off Saturday afternoon. Would you and Mia want to get lunch? Nothing fancy, just casual. I thought maybe it was time I met her. Ryan's heart rate spiked. You want to meet Mia? Only if you're comfortable with it. I know that's a big step, and if it's too soon, no. Yes. I'd like that. Let me ask her. He put Elena on hold and found Mia in her corner, building yet another cardboard structure. Hey kiddo, how would you feel about meeting Elena this Saturday? She suggested lunch. Mia's eyes went enormous. Really? She wants to meet me? She does. What should I wear? Should I tell her about my castle? Does she like pizza? Slow down. Just be yourself. That's all you need to be. Mia launched herself at him, nearly knocking him over. This is the best day. Ryan returned to the phone. So that's a yes from Mia. She's already planning her outfit. Elena's laugh was warm. I'm nervous too, if that helps. It actually does. How about that place near Laurelhurst Park? The one with the grilled cheese and tomato soup? Perfect. Noon? Noon. Ryan spent the next 4 days in a state of low-level anxiety. What if Mia and Elena didn't click? What if this was too much too soon? What if bringing someone into Mia's life was selfish and irresponsible? But Mia was excited in a way Ryan hadn't seen in months. She talked about Elena constantly, asked 1,000 questions Ryan couldn't answer, and changed her mind about outfits approximately 40 times. Saturday morning arrived cold and bright. Mia woke up before Ryan and was already dressed when he emerged from his mattress. It's 8 a.m., he said. We're not meeting Elena for 4 hours. I want to be ready. You're wearing your nice dress and your light-up sneakers. I'm not sure that combination says what you think it says. It says I'm fancy, but also fun. Ryan couldn't argue with that logic. They killed time at the park, then went home so Ryan could change into clothes Mia deemed acceptable. At 11:30, they headed to the restaurant. Elena was already there, standing outside looking more nervous than Ryan had ever seen her. She wore jeans and a sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail, and when she saw them approaching, her smile was uncertain. Mia gripped Ryan's hand tighter. That's her? That's her. She's pretty. Yeah, she is. They reached Elena, and for a moment all three of them just stood there in awkward silence. Then Mia stepped forward and stuck out her hand with the formality of a tiny business executive. Hi, I'm Mia. I'm 6.5. Nice to meet you. Elena's face transformed as she shook Mia's hand with equal seriousness. Nice to meet you too, Mia. I'm Elena. I've heard a lot about you. Good things? The best things. Your dad says you're very smart and you build impressive structures out of cardboard. Mia beamed. I do. Do you want to see pictures? Maybe after lunch? Ryan suggested gently. They went inside and settled into a booth, Mia between Ryan and the window, Elena across from them. The waiter brought menus, but Mia ignored hers in favor of studying Elena with the intensity of a scientist examining a new species. Do you like being a police officer? Mia asked. Most days. It's challenging but rewarding. Do you have a gun? Mia, Ryan warned. It's okay, Elena said. Yes, I have a gun, but I almost never have to use it. Most of my job is helping people and making sure everyone stays safe. Like a superhero? More like a really patient problem solver. Mia considered this. My dad's a problem solver too. He fixes things. I know, he's very good at it. He made me a bookshelf, and he cuts my sandwiches into triangles even though circles are impossible. Elena looked at Ryan, amused. Circles are impossible? Physics, Ryan said, and the limitations of square bread. They ordered grilled cheese and tomato soup for Mia, the same for Elena, a burger for Ryan, and conversation flowed more easily than Ryan had dared hope. Mia talked about school and her friends and her astronaut veterinarian princess plans. Elena listened with genuine interest, asking follow-up questions that made Mia light up even more. What about you? Mia asked suddenly. Do you have kids? The question landed like a stone in still water. Elena's smile faltered just for a second before recovering. No, I don't have kids. Do you want kids? Mia, that's personal, Ryan started. It's okay. Elena met Mia's gaze directly. I used to think I'd have kids someday, but life doesn't always go the way we plan, so now I'm not sure. Mia nodded sagely. Life is complicated, that's what Daddy says. Your daddy's right. The food arrived, saving them from further interrogation. They ate and talked about lighter things, favorite colors, best pizza toppings, whether cats or dogs made better pets. Mia was charming and funny, and only slightly overwhelming, and Elena seemed genuinely delighted by her. After lunch, they walked to Laurelhurst Park. It was too cold for the playground to be crowded, but Mia wanted to swing, and Elena offered to push her. Ryan watched from a nearby bench as his daughter and the woman he was dating fell into an easy rhythm, Mia shouting, "Higher!" and Elena complying with theatrical grunts of effort. Something tight in Ryan's chest loosened. They were okay together. More than okay. After 20 minutes, Mia ran off to explore the fallen leaves, and Elena joined Ryan on the bench. She's wonderful, Elena said softly. Yeah, she really is. And terrifying. I've interviewed murder suspects less intimidating than a 6-year-old asking about my reproductive plans. Ryan laughed. She doesn't have a filter. I'm working on that. Don't. It's refreshing. Elena watched Mia jump in a pile of leaves. Thank you for letting me meet her. Thank you for wanting to. They sat in comfortable silence, watching Mia play. The November sun was weak but present, and the park smelled like rain and earth and possibility. So, Elena said eventually, does this mean we passed the test? With flying colors. Good. Because I really like you, Ryan. And I really like your daughter, and that's terrifying, but also really nice. Ryan reached over and took her hand. I really like you too, and I'm glad you're brave enough to be terrified. We're quite a pair. Yeah, we really are. Mia ran back over, breathless and covered in leaf debris. Can Elena come see my castle, the one at home? Ryan looked at Elena. You don't have to, I'd love to, Elena said, if that's okay with you. It's okay with me. They walked back to Ryan's apartment, Mia chattering the entire way about the architectural features of her cardboard city. The apartment looked even smaller with 3 people in it, but Elena didn't seem to notice or care. She examined Mia's constructions with appropriate awe, asked intelligent questions about urban planning, and genuinely seemed to appreciate the vision. This is really impressive, Elena told Mia. You've got real talent. Mia glowed. Maybe when I'm an astronaut veterinarian princess, I can also be an architect. That's a lot of jobs. I'm ambitious. Later, after Mia had exhausted herself explaining every detail of her cardboard empire and had settled into her corner with a book, Elena and Ryan sat on his mattress drinking terrible instant coffee. Your life is beautiful, Elena said quietly. Chaotic and cramped, and beautiful. It's something. It's everything. Don't diminish it. Ryan looked at his tiny apartment, at Mia reading in her corner, at Elena sitting beside him on a mattress that served as his bed and his couch, and sometimes Mia's trampoline. Beautiful felt like a generous description, but maybe Elena saw something he'd stopped seeing. Maybe from the outside his life looked like what it actually was. Survival transformed into something like grace. Thank you, Ryan said. For today, for being good with Mia, for not running when you saw how complicated my life is. Your life isn't complicated. It's full. There's a difference. They talked until Mia emerged from her corner demanding dinner, and then Ryan walked Elena to her car. The evening had turned cold, and their breath came out in visible clouds. Same time next Thursday? Elena asked. Or maybe sooner, if you're free? I'm working until Wednesday, but Wednesday night I'm off. We could do something low-key. Movie at my place? Ryan thought about logistics, babysitters, work schedule, the practical reality of maintaining a relationship with his constraints. But he was tired of logistics determining his life. Wednesday works. I'll figure it out. Elena kissed him, longer this time, her hands on his jacket, pulling him closer. Ryan's heart hammered against his ribs, and he forgot about the cold and the complications and everything except the warmth of her mouth and the fact that he was doing this. Actually doing this. "Good night, Ryan," Elena whispered against his lips. "Good night." He watched her drive away, then went back upstairs to find Mia waiting with approximately 1,000 questions. But the first one was simple and direct. "Do you love her?" Ryan sat beside her. "It's too soon for love, kiddo. We're still getting to know each other." "But you could love her?" "Maybe. Someday." Mia seemed satisfied with this answer. "I like her. She's nice. And she didn't treat me like I was just a kid." "You are just a kid." "I'm a kid with important opinions." Ryan pulled her into a hug. "That you are." That night, lying on his mattress, Ryan thought about Elena's words. "Your life is beautiful." Maybe it was. Maybe he'd been so focused on what he didn't have, a partner, financial security, a bigger apartment, that he'd stopped appreciating what he did have. A daughter who loved him, work that meant something, and now, possibly, someone who saw both his struggles and his strengths and chose to stay anyway. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't easy, but it was his, and for the first time in years, that felt like enough. His phone buzzed. "Elena, thank you for today. Mia is incredible. You're incredible. I'm really glad I stopped you that night." "Me too," Ryan typed back, even though I thought I was getting arrested. Best arrest that never happened. "See you Wednesday. Can't wait." Ryan smiled at his phone in the darkness, feeling something dangerous and wonderful taking root in his chest. Hope. Actual, genuine hope. And for tonight, that was everything. Wednesday arrived carrying the weight of Ryan's growing anxiety. The movie at Elena's place meant seeing where she lived, entering her private space, crossing another threshold in whatever this relationship was becoming. It also meant arranging care for Mia on a weeknight, which felt indulgent in a way that made Ryan's practical brain protest loudly. But Marcus's sister Elena, the daycare Elena, not the dating Elena, which was getting confusing, had offered to take Mia for a sleepover with her own daughter. "They're already best friends," she'd told Ryan when he'd called asking for help. "And you need to stop feeling guilty about having a life outside of being a dad." So Ryan found himself standing outside Elena Cruz's condo at 7:30 p.m., holding a bottle of wine he'd agonized over at the store for 15 minutes and feeling absurdly nervous. He'd been to her place once before, briefly, when she'd needed to grab something before one of their dates. But this was different. This was intentional. Elena opened the door before he could knock. "I heard you pacing in the hallway." "I wasn't pacing." "You were definitely pacing." She stepped back to let him in. "Come on, I promise my place doesn't bite." The condo was small but carefully arranged, all clean lines and neutral colors. A couch faced a TV mounted on the wall, bookshelves flanked a window that overlooked the parking lot, and everything was meticulously organized in a way that suggested either military precision or deep-seated need for control. Probably both. "This is nice," Ryan said, handing her the wine. "It's functional." Elena took the bottle to the kitchen, really just an alcove with appliances. "Make yourself comfortable. Movies queued up." Ryan sat on the couch and tried to relax. The apartment smelled like Elena's perfume and something else, something faintly sad that he couldn't identify. Then he noticed the balcony door and realized what it was, the smell of neglect, of a space deliberately ignored. "You never use the balcony," he said when Elena returned with 2 glasses of wine. Her expression shuddered. "No." "Can I ask why?" Elena sat beside him, close enough that their knees touched. "David and I used to sit out there every evening when the weather was nice. We'd drink coffee and make plans about the future. After he died, I couldn't stand being out there. It felt like sitting with a ghost." Ryan took her hand. "When's the last time you even opened the door?" "Honestly, not since the funeral, almost 4 years. Elena's voice was flat, clinical, like she was reporting on someone else's life. "I know it's probably a mess. The railing's probably rotted, but dealing with it means acknowledging what it represents, and I'm not ready for that." "What does it represent?" "All the futures that didn't happen, the conversations we'll never have, the life we planned that just evaporated." Elena took a long drink of wine. "Sorry, this is depressing. let's watch the movie. But Ryan didn't move toward the TV. Instead, he set his own glass down and turned to face her fully. Can I tell you something? And you promise not to think I'm crazy? I already think you're a little crazy. You agreed to date a cop who stopped you on the street. Fair point. Ryan took a breath. When Sarah left, I couldn't go into Mia's room for 3 days. Every time I looked at her crib or her changing table, all I could see was this future where I failed her, where I couldn't do it alone and she ended up in foster care or with Sarah's parents who didn't want her in the first place. The room represented every way I could screw up this tiny person's life. What changed? Mia. She needed me, and I couldn't avoid her room forever. So I went in, and it was just a room. The fear was real, but the room was just wood and paint, and a crying baby who needed her diaper changed. Ryan squeezed Elena's hand. Your balcony is probably just wood and paint, too, with maybe some spider webs. Definitely spider webs. The fear's real, but avoiding it doesn't make it go away. It just gives the fear more power. Elena was quiet for a long moment, staring at the balcony door like it might come alive and attack. Then she stood abruptly. Okay. Okay, what? Let's look at it. The balcony. Right now, before I lose my nerve. Ryan stood too. You don't have to... No, you're right. I've been avoiding it for 4 years. That's long enough. But Elena's hand trembled as she reached for the door handle. Ryan moved behind her, his hand covering hers on the handle. Together? Together. They opened the door as one. The balcony was small, maybe 6 feet by 4 feet, with a railing that was indeed showing signs of weather damage. Dead leaves had accumulated in the corners, and the 2 chairs that sat facing the view were covered in grime and bird droppings. But it wasn't the disaster Elena had imagined. It was just a neglected outdoor space, sad and forgotten, but salvageable. Elena stepped out tentatively, like the floor might give way beneath her feet. It's smaller than I remembered. Most things are, when you face them. She walked to the railing and gripped it, testing its stability. The wood creaked, but held. From this height, they could see a strip of Portland skyline, lights beginning to twinkle as evening deepened into night. We were going to put plants out here, Elena said softly. David wanted tomatoes. I told him they wouldn't get enough sun, but he was convinced he could make it work. We had this whole argument about it the week before he died. I was so stubborn about being right. Were you right? I'll never know. We never planted them. Elena's voice cracked. I'd give anything to have been wrong, to have tomato plants dying on this balcony right now because I let him try. Ryan wrapped his arms around her from behind, and Elena leaned back into him. They stood like that, looking out at the city, while Elena cried silently. Ryan didn't try to fix it or minimize it. He just held her while she grieved for tomato plants that never existed and futures that never materialized. After a while, Elena turned in his arms. Her eyes were red, but her voice was steady. Thank you for pushing me. I didn't push. I just opened a door. Same thing. She kissed him, tasting like salt and wine. This balcony's a disaster. Complete disaster. I should probably do something about it. Probably. They went back inside and Elena closed the door with less hesitation than she'd opened it. Something had shifted in her expression, not fixed exactly, but loosened, like a knot beginning to untangle. So, Ryan said, settling back on the couch. Movie? Movie. Elena curled up beside him, her head on his shoulder. Fair warning, I fall asleep during movies. It's a thing. Noted. They made it 45 minutes into some action film Ryan had never heard of before Elena's breathing evened out into sleep. Ryan should have woken her, should have gone home to his own mattress and his own complicated life. But Elena felt warm and solid against him, and her apartment was quiet in a way his never was, and he found himself just existing in the stillness. His phone buzzed, a text from daycare Elena. Girls are asleep. Mia wanted me to tell you she loves you and hopes you're having fun with your girlfriend. Ryan smiled and typed back, Tell her I love her too. And Elena's not my girlfriend. Does Elena know that? It's complicated. Everything's complicated until you decide it's not. Ryan set his phone down and looked at the woman sleeping against his shoulder. Dating Elena meant navigating her grief and his responsibilities, and the judgment of her coworkers, and the logistics of blending two complicated lives. It meant being patient and vulnerable and willing to face neglected balconies, both literal and metaphorical. But it also meant this: quiet moments in a small condo, holding someone who understood what it meant to carry weight, feeling less alone than he'd felt in years. Maybe daycare, Elena was right. Maybe it was only complicated because he was making it complicated. Ryan shifted carefully, trying to get more comfortable without waking Elena. She stirred and blinked up at him. Sorry, told you I fall asleep. You lasted longer than Mia usually does. Elena sat up, rubbing her eyes. What time is it? Almost 10. You should probably go. Don't you have work early tomorrow? Ryan did have work early tomorrow. The Lake Oswego bathroom was in the tile phase, which required focus and precision and more energy than he currently possessed. But leaving felt wrong, like walking away from something fragile that needed tending. Can I ask you something? He said, instead of standing. Always. The gossip at your precinct. Is it getting worse? Elena's expression closed slightly. Why do you ask? Because you mentioned it at dinner, and I've been thinking about it. About whether seeing me is making your life harder. You're not making my life harder, Ryan. Other people's opinions are making my life harder. That's a semantic difference. No, it's an important distinction. Elena turned to face him fully. People have been talking since coffee on Sunday, asking who you are, whether I'm ready, whether I'm dishonoring David's memory. And yeah, it bothers me. But you know what bothers me more? The idea of letting their judgment dictate my choices. What are they saying specifically? Elena hesitated, then sighed. That you're too young, that I'm moving too fast, that I should focus on my career instead of dating. One guy actually asked if I was having a midlife crisis. She laughed, but it was bitter. I'm 32. That's not midlife unless I'm planning to die at 64. I am younger than you. By 4 years, that's nothing. And you are moving fast by some standards. We've known each other less than a month. Are you trying to talk me out of this? Elena's voice had an edge Ryan hadn't heard before. Because if you are, just say it directly. No, I'm trying to make sure you've thought through what you're doing, that you're not going to wake up in 2 weeks and realize this was a rebound or a grief response or whatever your coworkers are implying. Elena stood abruptly and walked to the window. Her reflection in the glass looked small and tired. You want to know what I realized tonight when we opened that balcony door? What? That I've been living in a museum for 4 years. Every choice I've made has been about preserving David's memory or honoring his legacy or being the perfect widow. I haven't been living. I've been existing in this carefully controlled space where nothing changes and nothing hurts, but nothing matters either. She turned to face him. And then you showed up, this terrified guy holding a hardware store bag in the rain, and something in me woke up. Something that wanted more than just getting through days. Ryan stood and crossed to her. What do you want, Elena? Specifically. I want to stop being scared all the time. I want to use my balcony without crying. I want to date someone who sees me as a person, not a tragic figure. I want to feel something other than grief and duty. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. I want to keep seeing you, Ryan, even though it's fast and complicated and everyone has opinions. Is that specific enough? Ryan cupped her face in his hands. Yeah, that's specific enough. They kissed with more urgency than before, weeks of tension and uncertainty spilling over into something fierce and desperate. Elena's hands fisted in Ryan's shirt, pulling him closer, and he backed her against the wall beside the window. It was messy and intense and felt like falling and flying simultaneously. Stay, Elena whispered against his mouth. Stay tonight. Ryan wanted to, every cell in his body wanted to, but practicality reared its insistent head. I can't. I have to pick up Mia at 6 tomorrow morning before work. So set an alarm. Leave at 5:30. Elena, I know it's complicated, but I don't want you to leave yet. Elena's voice was small, almost pleading. Please. Ryan thought about all the reasons to say no. About maintaining boundaries and taking things slow and being responsible. But he was tired of responsibility being the only thing that guided his choices. Okay, but I really do have to leave by 5:30. Elena's smile was radiant. I'll make coffee. They moved to the bedroom, and Ryan tried not to think about whether this was David's bed, David's room, David's ghost watching them. But Elena seemed to sense his hesitation because she stopped at the doorway. I got rid of everything after the first year, she said quietly. New bed, new furniture, repainted the walls. This room is mine, not ours, just in case you were wondering. I was wondering. I figured. She pulled him inside. Now stop thinking so much. Ryan's alarm went off at 5 a.m. with the subtlety of an air raid siren. He fumbled for his phone, disoriented by unfamiliar surroundings and the warm weight of Elena pressed against his side. For a moment he couldn't remember where he was or why everything felt different. Then memory flooded back and brought a smile with it. You're a morning person, aren't you? Elena mumbled, not opening her eyes. Only when forced by circumstance. What time is it? 5. I need to go soon. Elena finally opened her eyes, and Ryan was struck by how young she looked without the careful control she usually maintained. Vulnerable. Happy. Was last night okay? Last night was perfect. Even the crying on the balcony part. Especially that part. Ryan kissed her forehead. But I really do need to go. Mia will be up by 6, and I can't be late. They went through an awkward dance of Ryan getting dressed while Elena watched from the bed, both of them trying to figure out the protocol for morning after when one person had parental responsibilities. Elena made coffee as promised, strong and black, and walked Ryan to the door. Thank you for staying, she said. Thank you for asking me to. Same time next week? Ryan thought about his schedule, about the bathroom project and Mia's school play rehearsals, and the endless logistics that defined his life. I'll check my calendar and text you. Very romantic. I'm a romantic guy. I bring hardware store receipts to first meetings. Elena laughed and kissed him. Go, before you're late and Mia stages a revolt. The drive across Portland in pre-dawn darkness gave Ryan time to process the previous night. The balcony door. Elena's tears. The way she'd asked him to stay with a vulnerability that had nearly broken his heart. The gossip at her precinct that made her question whether she deserved happiness. He wanted to protect her from that judgment, wanted to shield her from the people who thought they had a right to dictate her timeline for grief. But he also knew that wasn't his job. Elena had to navigate her own path through other people's opinions, just like Ryan had to navigate single parenthood without letting other people's assumptions define him. His phone rang. Marcus. Little early for a social call, Ryan answered. Where are you? Driving across town. Why? Because I just got to the Lake Oswego job and the client is here freaking out. Something about the tile guy not showing up and the timeline being destroyed. Ryan checked the time. 5:45. I'm not supposed to be there until 8. I know, but he's here now having a meltdown, and I thought you might want to do some damage control. This is your project. I'm picking up Mia at 6. Can it wait an hour? Probably not. This guy is talking about withholding payment and finding someone else. Ryan's stomach dropped. He needed that payment. Needed it like oxygen. Okay, I'll call the daycare and see if they can keep Mia through breakfast. I can be there by 6:30. Thanks, man. I know it's early. Ryan hung up and immediately called daycare Elena. She answered on the 4th ring, sounding groggy. Ryan, is everything okay? I have a work emergency. Can Mia stay through breakfast? I'll pick her up by 9 at the latest. Of course, she's still asleep anyway. Everything okay? Client's panicking about tile installation. I need to talk him down before he fires me. Go do what you need to do. Mia's fine here. Ryan ended the call and redirected toward Lake Oswego, anxiety building in his chest. The job had been going smoothly until now. The client was demanding but fair. The work was challenging but satisfying, and the money was supposed to solve several months' worth of financial stress. If he lost this job because the tile subcontractor flaked, all that security evaporated. He made it to the house at 6:28 to find the client pacing in his driveway, phone pressed to his ear, looking like a man contemplating murder. I don't care about your other jobs, the client was saying. We had an agreement. You breach that agreement, I find someone else. Simple. He ended the call and turned to Ryan. Where have you been? It's 6:30 in the morning. I'm not scheduled until 8. The tile guy was supposed to be here at 6. He just called saying he can't make it until next week. Next week? Do you understand what that does to my timeline? Ryan took a breath and accessed every ounce of customer service patience he'd developed over years of dealing with demanding clients. I understand your frustration. Let me make some calls. I know other tile contractors. I don't want other contractors. I want this job finished on schedule. And it will be. I promise. Give me 2 hours to sort this out. The client looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Ryan's expression must have convinced him. 2 hours, then I'm calling someone else. Ryan spent the next 90 minutes on the phone, calling every tile contractor he knew, and several he didn't. Most were booked solid. A few offered dates 2 weeks out. One quoted a price so high that Ryan actually laughed before hanging up. Finally, at 7:53, he reached a guy named Tommy who did small jobs between bigger contracts. Lake Oswego bathroom, you said. How many square feet? About 60. Custom tile, specific pattern the client wants. Heated floor underneath. Tommy whistled. That's detail work. I'd need to see it before committing. Can you be here by 9? Client's about to have a stroke. I can be there by 8:30, but Ryan, this is going to cost. Last-minute specialty work isn't cheap. How much? Tommy named a figure that would eat significantly into Ryan's profit margin, but wouldn't sink the job entirely. Done. 8:30. Ryan found the client in the basement, glaring at the empty floor where tile should have been going. I have someone coming at 8:30. He's good, reliable, and available. How much? Ryan told him, watching the client's face darken. That's 20% more than the original quote. It's also available today instead of next week. Your call. The client was quiet for a long moment, then nodded sharply. Fine. But if he's late or does shoddy work, I'm deducting it from your final payment. Fair enough. Tommy arrived at 8:30 on the dot, looked at the space and the tile pattern, and agreed to start that afternoon. The client was appeased. Ryan's profit margin was thinner but salvageable. Crisis averted. By the time Ryan made it to the daycare at 9:15, he was exhausted despite the day barely having started. Mia came running out when she saw his car, her face bright with excitement. Daddy, guess what we had for breakfast? What did you have? Pancakes with chocolate chips. And Sarah's mom said I could stay over again sometime because me and Sarah are best friends now. Ryan helped her into her car seat. Sounds like you had a good morning. I did. Did you have a good morning? Ryan thought about Elena's balcony, about the client's panic, about Tommy's last-minute rescue. It's been eventful. What's eventful mean? Means a lot happened very fast. Oh, that sounds stressful. Sometimes it is, kiddo. He dropped Mia at school and went back to Lake Oswego to coordinate with Tommy. The rest of the day was consumed by work, holding patterns, measurements, the physical labor that usually helped Ryan clear his mind. But today his thoughts kept circling back to Elena, to the conversation about her coworkers' gossip, to the question of what they were actually doing. His phone buzzed around 3. A text from Elena. How was your morning emergency? Survived. Tile guy flaked, found replacement, client appeased. Sounds exhausting. That's one word for it. Ryan hesitated, then added, Are you working tonight? Until midnight. Why? Just wondering. Wanted to hear your voice. Call me on my dinner break? Around 7? It's a date. Ryan worked until 6, picked up Mia from after-school care, made dinner, supervised homework that consisted mostly of coloring shapes. At 7, he stepped onto their small balcony, such as it was, really just a fire escape with delusions of grandeur, and called Elena. She answered on the second ring. Hey, you. Hey, how's your shift? Quiet, a lot of paperwork, the usual excitement. Her voice dropped. I miss you. I saw you this morning. Feels longer than that. Elena paused. Is this weird? Missing someone I've known for less than a month? If it's weird, we're both weird. I can live with that. Background noise filtered through, voices, radio chatter. Listen, I need to tell you something. The gossip at work, it's escalated. Ryan's stomach clenched. How? Someone saw us at the restaurant last week, took a photo. It's circulating now with commentary about how inappropriate it is for me to be dating so publicly when I'm supposed to be representing the department. That's insane. That's politics. And you know what the worst part is? I almost let it get to me. Almost called you today to suggest we slow down or keep things more private or whatever would make them stop talking. Elena's voice was fierce now. But then I thought about that balcony door, about spending 4 more years avoiding something because other people have opinions, and I decided I'm done with that. What does that mean? It means I'm not hiding you. I'm not apologizing for being happy. If they have a problem with me dating someone, they can take it up with HR, but I'm not living my life according to their timeline or their rules. Ryan felt something warm expand in his chest. You sure about that? Completely sure. Which leads me to my next question, and feel free to say no if it's too much too soon. What question? There's a precinct holiday party next Saturday. Spouses and partners invited. Would you want to come with me? Fair warning, it will be extremely awkward, and everyone will stare, and at least 3 people will probably say something inappropriate. Ryan thought about Mia's play rehearsal, about his work schedule, about walking into a room full of cops who'd already decided he was too young and Elena was moving too fast. Every practical bone in his body screamed to decline politely. What time does it start? He heard himself ask. 7. It's casual, just drinks and socializing at a bar downtown. I'll need to arrange care for Mia. So that's a yes? That's a yes. Elena's relief was audible. Thank you. You have no idea what this means to me. Actually, I think I do. They talked for another 10 minutes before Elena had to get back to work. Ryan stood on the fire escape in the November cold, looking out at Portland's lights and feeling like he was standing on the edge of something significant. Going to that party meant claiming this relationship publicly, meant meeting Elena's colleagues knowing they'd already judged him, meant putting himself in an uncomfortable situation for no reason except that it mattered to her. But it did matter. She was choosing him over their judgment, and the least he could do was show up. Ryan went back inside to find Mia building another cardboard structure, this one taller and more precarious than usual. What are you making? A tower. It's going to touch the ceiling. That's ambitious. I'm an ambitious person. Mia added another box to the structure. Was that Elena? Yeah. When can I see her again? Ryan sat on the floor beside his daughter. How would you feel about me going to a party with her next Saturday? It's a work thing for her job. Mia's eyes went wide. Like a grown-up party? Exactly like a grown-up party. What will I do? I'm thinking sleepover with Sarah again. Would that be okay? That would be amazing. Sarah and I can build an even bigger city. Mia paused in her construction. Is Elena your girlfriend now? The question hung in the air between them. Ryan thought about labels and definitions and what he was willing to claim. Yeah, he said finally, I think she is. Good, I like her, and you should have a girlfriend. It makes you smile more. Ryan pulled Mia into a hug, this small, wise person who understood things she shouldn't have to understand. How'd you get so smart? I have a good teacher. Yeah, you do. The week leading up to the precinct party was consumed by work and logistics and Ryan's growing anxiety about what he was walking into. He finished the Lake Oswego bathroom on Thursday, the client grudgingly admitting the work was exceptional. Ryan took progress photos and added them to his portfolio, already fielding calls from 2 of the client's friends about their own renovation projects. Money was still tight, but no longer suffocating. For the first time in months, Ryan could breathe without calculating whether he could afford that breath. Friday night, Elena came over to his apartment. It was the first time she'd been there since the lunch with Mia, and Ryan saw it through her eyes, the cramped space, the makeshift bedroom partition, the evidence of a life lived on the margins. I know it's small, he said, suddenly embarrassed. It's perfect, Elena said firmly. It's yours and Mia's, and that makes it perfect. They ordered pizza, and Mia regaled Elena with stories about school and Sarah and her latest architectural vision. Elena listened with genuine interest, asking questions and laughing at Mia's jokes, and Ryan watched them together feeling something dangerously close to contentment. After Mia went to bed, Ryan and Elena sat on his mattress drinking wine from mismatched mugs because Ryan didn't own proper wine glasses. Nervous about tomorrow? Elena asked. Terrified. Me too. You don't have to be nervous. They're your coworkers. Exactly. which means they know all my weak spots and aren't afraid to exploit them. Elena set her mug down. But I meant what I said. I'm done hiding. Whatever happens tomorrow, we face it together. Together, Ryan agreed. They fell asleep tangled together on Ryan's mattress, and when Ryan woke at 6 a.m. to Mia standing beside the bed staring at them, he couldn't even be embarrassed. Is Elena staying for breakfast? Mia asked. If she wants to. Elena opened one eye. What's for breakfast? Cereal or toast? We're not fancy here. Toast sounds perfect. They spent the morning in comfortable domesticity, toast and coffee and Mia showing Elena her latest cardboard creation. At 10, Elena left to prepare for her shift, and Ryan spent the day doing laundry and trying not to obsess about the evening ahead. At 5 p.m., he stood in front of his closet, trying to decide what one wore to meet a girlfriend's coworkers who already disapproved of you. He settled on dark jeans and a button-down shirt, the same outfit he wore to client meetings. Professional, but not trying too hard. Mia gave him a final inspection before he left for Sarah's house. You look handsome, Daddy. Thanks, kiddo. Remember to smile and be yourself. Elena likes you just how you are. When did you become the adult in this relationship? Someone has to be. Ryan dropped Mia at the sleepover and drove downtown, his anxiety ratcheting higher with each mile. He was meeting Elena at the bar because she was coming straight from work. The place was already crowded when he arrived, full of people in casual clothes, laughing and drinking and looking like they belonged. Ryan very much did not feel like he belonged. He spotted Elena near the bar and his breath caught. She'd changed out of her uniform into jeans and a soft gray sweater, her hair down and her smile bright when she saw him. You came, she said, like she'd doubted. I said I would. I know, but saying and doing are different things. Elena took his hand. Ready to face the firing squad? As ready as I'll ever be. They plunged into the crowd together, and Ryan felt every eye in the place track their movement. Elena introduced him to a seemingly endless stream of officers and civilian staff, and Ryan shook hands and made small talk, and tried to ignore the speculative looks and whispered conversations happening just out of earshot. One officer, a man in his 50s with the build of someone who'd stopped working out but wouldn't admit it, was less subtle than the others. So you're the guy, he said, looking Ryan up and down. Younger than I expected. Tom? Elena said, her voice carrying a warning. What? I'm just making an observation. You're what, 25? 28, Ryan said evenly. Still, Elena's what, 32, 33? Tom, drop it. But Tom was on a roll. Just seems fast, that's all. 4 years isn't that long, and now you're showing up to work events with some kid. Ryan felt Elena tense beside him, felt her about to respond, and he beat her to it. You're right, he said calmly. We haven't known each other long. And yeah, I'm younger. But here's what you don't know. I'm a single father who's been raising his daughter alone since she was 9 months old. I work construction 6 days a week to keep a roof over our heads. I don't have time for games or casual dating or whatever you think this is. So when I show up here tonight knowing people like you are going to judge me, it's because Elena matters enough to deal with it. And if that's too fast for your comfort, that's your problem, not ours. Tom blinked, apparently not expecting the quiet contractor to have a spine. Around them, other conversations had quieted, people listening without pretending otherwise. Well, Tom said finally, guess you're not as young as you look. Guess not. Tom walked away, and Elena squeezed Ryan's hand so hard it almost hurt. That was incredible. That was stupid. I probably just made things worse. No, you stood up for us. For yourself. That's exactly what needed to happen. The rest of the evening was easier. People still stared, still whispered, but there was a new quality to it. Curiosity instead of judgment. Respect instead of dismissal. Ryan met Elena's captain, a woman in her 40s who looked him in the eye and said, Elena speaks highly of you. That's not something she does lightly. By 10 p.m., Ryan was exhausted from socializing and being on display. Elena sensed it and suggested they leave. They walked to his car through Portland's cold night, their breath visible in the air. Thank you for tonight, Elena said, for coming, for dealing with Tom, for being exactly who you are. Thank you for inviting me, for not caring what they think. Oh, I care. But I care more about this. She gestured between them. About us. Whatever we're building. Ryan pulled her close, there on the sidewalk outside the bar where her coworkers might see. I care about it too. They kissed under a streetlight, two people choosing each other despite the complications, despite the gossip, despite every practical reason to walk away. And when Ryan drove home later to pick up Mia, he felt like he'd crossed some invisible threshold, like he'd stopped just surviving and started actually living. It was terrifying and exhilarating and completely worth it. The precinct party marked a turning point, but not in the way Ryan expected. Over the next 2 weeks, Elena's coworkers didn't suddenly embrace their relationship. If anything, the gossip intensified. But something had shifted in Elena herself. She stopped apologizing for being happy, stopped second-guessing every choice, stopped living like she needed permission to move forward. It was December now, Portland wrapped in its winter gloom. Rain fell constantly, turning the city into a watercolor of grays and silvers. Ryan's work slowed as it always did this time of year, clients postponing projects until spring. Money got tight again, not crisis level, but enough to make Ryan nervous. He picked up whatever small jobs he could find, replacing a deck, fixing crown molding damaged by a leak, building custom shelving for a home office. Elena's schedule was erratic as always, night shifts and day shifts bleeding together in a pattern that made planning nearly impossible. But they found rhythms. Tuesday mornings when Elena got off night shift and Ryan could take Mia to school late. Sunday afternoons at the park with Mia, Elena pushing the swings while Ryan pretended to be a dragon that needed defeating. Wednesday evenings at Elena's place after Mia was asleep, Ryan driving across town just to sit on her couch and exist in the quiet together. It was in one of those quiet Wednesday moments, 3 weeks after the precinct party, that Elena brought up the balcony again. I want to fix it, she said, curled against Ryan's side. The balcony. Make it usable again. Ryan looked at the door they'd opened that night but hadn't ventured through since. What brought this on? I don't know. Maybe I'm tired of avoiding it. Maybe I want to prove to myself I can reclaim things I've been hiding from. Elena sat up, her expression determined. Will you help me? Help you how? You fix things for a living. The railing's rotted. The floor probably needs work. I want to make it a space I can actually use, not a shrine to things that didn't happen. Ryan thought about the practical challenges, materials, time, whether the condo association would need to approve the work. But he also thought about what the balcony represented, about Elena choosing to rebuild instead of just avoiding. Yeah, he said, I'll help you. They started the following Saturday. Ryan brought tools and wood and his expertise, while Elena provided labor and an apparently bottomless supply of anxiety. Mia came too, appointed as project supervisor, and taking her role very seriously. The balcony was worse than Ryan had initially thought. The railing was indeed rotted through in places, the floor had water damage that needed addressing, and the whole structure needed to be brought up to code. It would take multiple weekends, maybe a month of work. This is a bigger project than I thought, Elena said, surveying the damage with dismay. Good things usually are. Well, Ryan marked measurements on a piece of scrap wood, but it's doable. We just take it piece by piece. Mia sat in one of the grimy chairs making architectural drawings of what the balcony should look like when finished. It needs plants, she announced, and maybe lights, twinkle lights like at the park. Twinkle lights, Elena repeated, smiling. I like it. They worked through the afternoon, Ryan teaching Elena how to use a circular saw, Mia handing them tools and offering commentary on their technique. The December cold bit at their fingers, and the rain threatened constantly, but there was something deeply satisfying about the work, about taking something broken and making it whole. Around 4, Mia announced she was hungry and could they please get pizza. They ordered delivery and sat on Elena's living room floor, eating directly from the box, all 3 of them covered in sawdust and paint residue. This is nice, Mia said, her mouth full of pepperoni. We should do this more. Do what? Ryan asked. Demolition work? Be together, the 3 of us. It feels like a family. The word landed in the room with weight. Ryan and Elena exchanged glances, neither quite sure how to respond. They'd been carefully avoiding labels, taking things day by day. But Mia, in her 6-year-old wisdom, had named what they'd all been feeling. "You know what?" Elena said softly. "It does feel like a family." Mia beamed, apparently satisfied with this acknowledgement. Ryan felt his throat tighten with an emotion he couldn't quite name. This wasn't what he'd planned, wasn't what he'd imagined when Elena had stopped him on that rainy street 2 months ago. But it was real and good and terrifying in the best way. Later, after they'd dropped Mia at home and Ryan had returned to help Elena clean up, she brought it up again. "Did I overstep?" Elena asked, scrubbing paint from her hands in the kitchen sink. "Agreeing with Mia about the family thing?" "No, you were honest. That's never overstepping." "But it's fast. We've only been dating for 2 months." Ryan joined her at the sink, taking over the scrubbing. "You know what I've learned? Time isn't the same as readiness. I dated Sarah for 2 years before we had Mia, and we still weren't ready for what came after. But sometimes you meet someone and 2 months feels like enough because it's the right person." "You think I'm the right person?" "I think you're someone who makes me want to be better, who makes me believe I deserve more than just surviving." "Yeah, I think you're the right person." Elena kissed him, her hands still wet from washing, and Ryan thought about how far they'd both come from that first awkward coffee, how they'd moved from strangers to something that felt solid and real. The balcony project consumed the next 3 weekends. Ryan replaced the railing, reinforced the floor, added weatherproofing that should have been there from the start. Elena painted everything a soft gray blue, the color of Portland's winter sky. Mia helped string the twinkle lights she'd insisted on, her tongue poking out in concentration as she wrapped them around the new railing. On the 3rd weekend, as they were putting finishing touches on the space, Elena disappeared inside and returned with 2 tomato plants in terracotta pots. Ryan stared at them. "Tomatoes?" "David wanted to grow them out here. I told him they wouldn't get enough sun." Elena's voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly as she set the pots down. "I'm still pretty sure I was right about that, but I want them here anyway. As a memorial. As a bridge between who I was then and who I'm becoming now." Elena looked at Ryan, her eyes bright. "I love David. I'll always love him. But I'm also falling in love with you, and I need both of those things to be true at the same time." Ryan's heart stuttered. They hadn't said those words yet, had been dancing around them for weeks. "You're falling in love with me? Is that okay?" Ryan pulled her close, the tomato plants forgotten. "It's more than okay. Because I'm falling in love with you too." They kissed surrounded by the space they'd rebuilt together, and Ryan thought about bridges and balconies and the courage it took to grow things that might not survive but were worth trying anyway. But not everything was fixed just because they'd rebuilt a balcony. 2 days before Christmas, Elena called Ryan at 11 p.m., her voice tight with something Ryan couldn't identify. "Can you talk?" "Of course. What's wrong?" "I'm being transferred. Not transferred exactly. Reassigned. My captain called me in today and said there have been complaints about my conduct, about the relationship affecting my professionalism." Elena's words came fast, tumbling over each other. "It's all bullshit, Ryan. I haven't done anything wrong. But they're moving me to day shift in a different precinct anyway, calling it a lateral move, but we both know what it really is." Ryan sat down on his mattress, trying to process. "Can they do that?" "Technically, yes. There's no rule against dating someone you met on duty, but there's also a lot of gray area about department reputation and professional conduct. My captain says it's for the best, that it'll let things cool down, but it feels like punishment." "When does this happen?" "January 1st, new year, new precinct, fresh start." Elena's laugh was bitter. "Except it's not really fresh if I'm being pushed out because people don't like that I'm moving on with my life." "What do you want to do?" "I don't know. Part of me wants to fight it, file a grievance, make noise. But another part of me just wants to take the transfer and prove I can do the job anywhere." Elena paused. "And there's another part that's wondering if this is worth it, if we're worth all this drama." Ryan's chest went cold. "Are you breaking up with me?" "No, God, no, but I'm scared, Ryan. Scared that 6 months from now I'll regret all of this. Scared that I'm throwing away my career for a relationship that might not last. Scared that I'm being selfish and impulsive instead of smart and cautious. You want to know what I think? Please." I think you've been smart and cautious for 4 years, and it left you alone in a condo with a balcony you couldn't use and a life that was just going through motions. I think being a little selfish and impulsive is exactly what you need. Ryan took a breath. But I also think this has to be your choice. If the job matters more, I'll understand. Mia and I will be okay. The job doesn't matter more. That's what scares me. I've spent 7 years building this career, and I'd give it up in a heartbeat for you and Mia. What does that say about me? It says you know what matters. That's not weakness, Elena. That's clarity. Elena was quiet for a long moment. I'm taking the transfer, not because they're forcing me to, but because I choose to. Because fighting it means making this relationship about defiance instead of just living it. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. I'm still terrified. Me too. But we're terrified together, remember? Elena's laugh was watery but genuine. Yeah, together. Christmas came 3 days later. Ryan had planned to spend it quietly with Mia, their usual tradition of pancakes and opening the few presents he could afford. But Elena asked if she could join them, and Ryan found himself saying yes before he'd fully thought it through. She arrived at 8 a.m. with gifts wrapped in paper Mia immediately declared so pretty, I don't want to open them. For Mia, there were art supplies and books about space exploration and a small succulent in a hand-painted pot. For Ryan, a set of high-quality woodworking chisels he'd mentioned wanting months ago. This is too much, Ryan said, running his thumb over the handles. You helped me rebuild my balcony. Let me help you build other things. Ryan's gifts felt inadequate by comparison. A scarf he'd seen Elena admiring at a craft fair, a photo frame with a picture of the three of them working on the balcony. But Elena's eyes got wet when she opened the frame, and she immediately found a place for it on her bookshelf. They spent the day in Ryan's tiny apartment, cooking together in the kitchenette that barely fit 2 people, watching Mia assemble various new toys with fierce concentration, existing in the kind of domestic simplicity that felt more meaningful than any grand gesture. That evening, after Mia was asleep, Ryan and Elena sat on the fire escape that passed for his balcony. The Portland night was cold but clear, stars actually visible for once. I have something to tell you, Elena said, and I need you to just listen until I'm done, okay? Ryan's stomach clenched. Okay, I bought a house. Well, made an offer on a house. A real house with a yard and 3 bedrooms and a garage. In your neighborhood, actually. 3 blocks from your apartment. Elena spoke quickly, like she was afraid if she stopped, she wouldn't continue. I know it's fast and presumptuous and maybe crazy, but the condo has too many memories and not enough space for a life that includes other people. And I want a life that includes other people's, specifically you and Mia. Ryan stared at her, trying to process. You bought a house. I made an offer. It's not final yet, but yeah, basically. Elena turned to face him. I'm not asking you to move in. We're not there yet. But I'm asking you to imagine a future where maybe someday you could. Where Mia has her own room instead of a corner with a curtain. Where we have space to actually be a family instead of just squeezing it in around work schedules and tiny apartments. When would this happen? Closing is in February. So 2 months. Elena's hands were shaking. Tell me I'm not insane. Ryan thought about his cramped apartment, about Mia sleeping behind a curtain, about the careful budgeting that never quite stretched far enough. But he also thought about independence, about the life he'd built alone, about the fear of depending on someone who might leave. You're not insane, he said finally. But I'm terrified. Of what? Of this being too good. Of you waking up one day and realizing you made a mistake. Of Mia getting attached to you and then losing you the way she lost her mom. Ryan, look at me. Elena took his face in her hands. I'm not Sarah. I'm not leaving. Yes, we're moving fast, but that's because I spent 4 years moving so slowly, I almost forgot how to move at all. I know what I want now, and I want this. I want you and Mia, and a house with a yard where we can plant things that might not survive winter, but we try anyway. What if I can't afford to help with a mortgage? What if I lose work and can't contribute equally? Then we figure it out together. That's what partnership means. Elena's voice was fierce. I don't need you to be anything other than who you are. A good father, a skilled carpenter, someone who opens balcony doors when I'm too scared to do it alone. Ryan kissed her, tasting salt and hope, and the future they were building word by word, choice by choice. I love you. I love you too. But I need time to wrap my head around this, to talk to Mia, to figure out what it means for us. Take all the time you need. The house doesn't close until February anyway. They sat together in the cold until Ryan's phone alarm reminded him it was past midnight and he needed sleep before an early job. Elena left with promises to call tomorrow, and Ryan lay on his mattress thinking about houses and yards and futures that seemed impossible but were maybe, just maybe, within reach. The next morning, Mia asked the question Ryan had been dreading. Is Elena going to be my mom? They were eating breakfast, pancakes left over from Christmas morning. Ryan set his fork down carefully. What makes you ask that? Because you love her, and she loves you, and that's what happens in stories. People fall in love and become families. Real life is more complicated than stories, kiddo. But she could be, right? Like, maybe not now, but someday? Ryan chose his words carefully. Elena and I are building something together. What that becomes, we're still figuring out. But she cares about you very much. That I know for sure. Does she want to live with us? She bought a house, near here, and she's thinking about what it might be like if someday we all lived there together. Mia's eyes went wide. A real house? With rooms and everything? A real house. Would I have my own room? You would. Mia was quiet for a long moment, her 6-year-old mind working through implications Ryan couldn't fully anticipate. Would we have to leave our apartment? Eventually, yeah, but not right away. And we'd take everything with us, your castle, your books, all of it. What about Mrs. Chen? I'd miss Mrs. Chen. She's only 3 blocks away. You could visit any time. Mia pushed her pancakes around her plate. I like Elena, but I also like just us, just you and me. Ryan felt his throat tighten. Me too, kiddo. Just us has been pretty great. But maybe us plus Elena could be great too. Maybe it could. Okay. Mia took another bite of pancake, apparently satisfied with this conclusion. Can I decorate my new room purple? We'll have to ask Elena, but I think purple would be perfect. January arrived with its usual Portland rain and the weight of new beginnings. Elena started at her new precinct, day shift instead of nights, which meant she was around more in the evenings. The transfer had been difficult. New colleagues, new politics, the same whispers following her about the relationship that had supposedly compromised her professionalism. But Elena held her head high and did her job with the same competence she'd always brought to the work. The house closing was delayed twice, paperwork issues and inspection problems that made Elena worry it would fall through entirely. Ryan found himself wanting it to work out with an intensity that surprised him. He'd visit the house with Elena on weekends, walking through empty rooms and imagining furniture, imagining Mia running down the hallway, imagining a life bigger than survival. In late January, Ryan got a call from the Lake Oswego client's friend, the bathroom renovation referral from months ago. The project had finally gotten approval from the client's spouse, and they wanted Ryan to start in February. The pay was even better than the last job, enough that Ryan could actually start saving instead of just treading water. Things are coming together, Marcus observed one afternoon on a job site. New girlfriend, good work, your kid's happy. You're like a whole different person than you were 6 months ago. I feel like a different person. You gonna move in with her? Elena? Ryan hammered a nail with more force than necessary. I don't know, maybe. She bought a house. That's a pretty clear signal, man. I know, but it's fast. And what if it doesn't work out? What if I uproot Mia's whole life and then Elena and I crash and burn? Marcus set down his own hammer. What if it does work out? What if you miss out on something amazing because you're too scared to take the risk? When did you become a relationship counselor? When I watched my best friend spend 5 years convinced he didn't deserve happiness. You do deserve it, Ryan. Stop punishing yourself for Sarah's choices. The words hit harder than Ryan expected. He'd spent so long defining himself by what he'd lost. Sarah leaving, his abandoned college plans, the financial struggle, that he'd forgotten to imagine what he might gain. That night, he called Elena. I want to talk about the house. Okay. Elena's voice was cautious. What about it? I want to know what you're imagining, specifically. Not someday vague plans, but actual concrete details. Elena took a breath. I'm imagining you and Mia moving in sometime this summer, after school's out. I'm imagining Mia having the room with the window seat, you and I sharing the master bedroom, your tools in the garage. I'm imagining weekends working on the yard together and weeknight dinners that aren't always takeout because we actually have a kitchen big enough for two people to cook in. What about Mia calling you mom? What about marriage? What about the long-term stuff that's too big to just wing it? I'm imagining that too. All of it. But I'm also okay with it happening on its own timeline. Mia can call me Elena forever if that's what feels right to her. Marriage can wait until we're both ready, or not happen at all if that's what we decide. The long-term stuff doesn't scare me because I know I want it with you. Ryan's hands were shaking. I'm still scared. Me too. But I'm more excited than scared, aren't you? Ryan thought about Mia decorating a purple room, about cooking in a real kitchen, about sharing a bed with Elena every night instead of stealing hours when schedules aligned, about building something permanent instead of just surviving day to day. Yeah, he said, I'm more excited than scared. So is that a yes? You'll move in when the time comes? It's a yes, with one condition. What condition? I pay rent. Market rate, whatever's fair. I'm not looking for charity or to be taken care of. I need to contribute equally. Ryan, I mean it, Elena. This is important to me. Okay, we'll figure out something fair, but you have to actually let me help sometimes too. Partnership goes both ways. Deal. The house closed on February 14th, which Elena declared was either extremely romantic or aggressively on the nose. They spent Valentine's Day painting the living room, Mia helping by adding decorative handprints to a wall that would eventually be covered by furniture. It was messy and exhausting and perfect. That evening, covered in paint and sitting on the floor of their empty living room, Elena pulled out a small box. I got you something, she said. It's not an engagement ring before you panic, but it's important. Inside the box was a key on a simple chain, the key to the house. I know you're not moving in until summer, Elena said, but this is yours now, yours and Mia's. I want you to feel like this is your space, not somewhere you're just visiting. Ryan took the key, its weight somehow more significant than it should have been. Thank you. Thank you for taking the risk. I know it's not easy. Mia appeared from the room she'd claimed as her own, purple paint somehow in her hair, despite them not having painted that room yet. Can we get pizza? I'm starving. They ordered pizza and ate it sitting on the floor, talking about furniture and paint colors, and how they'd arranged the kitchen. It felt like playing house, except it was real. This was actually happening. March brought warmer weather in Ryan's final weeks in the apartment. Packing up 6 years of life felt both monumental and anticlimactic. Most of what he owned fit in boxes easily: clothes, Mia's toys, kitchen supplies, tools. The furniture was staying behind for the next tenant, most of it having come with the place anyway. Mrs. Chen cried when Ryan told her they were leaving. You've been good neighbors, she said, pressing a hand-knitted scarf into his hands. And that little girl deserves a real bedroom. We'll visit, Ryan promised. We're only 3 blocks away. The actual move happened on a Saturday in late March. Marcus and his crew showed up with trucks and muscle, making short work of boxes and furniture. Elena had taken the day off and organized everything with military precision, assigning tasks and making sure nothing got forgotten. By evening, they were moved in. Boxes everywhere, chaos in every room. But home. Actually, home. Ryan stood in the master bedroom, his and Elena's bedroom, still a concept he was adjusting to, and felt the weight of the past 6 years lift slightly. This room had space for both of them. The whole house had space for all of them. Elena found him there, wrapping her arms around him from behind. You okay? Yeah, just processing. Big change. Huge change. Ryan turned to face her. Thank you for pushing me toward this, for not letting me stay scared. Thank you for being brave enough to try. They kissed, surrounded by boxes and possibility, two people who'd met by accident and chosen each other deliberately, over and over, until choice became commitment and commitment became love. Mia's voice floated up from downstairs. Daddy, Elena, come see what I did with my room. They went downstairs to find Mia had arranged all her cardboard structures in her new room, creating an entire city that took up half the floor space. The purple walls she'd requested made everything look like a fairy tale kingdom. It's perfect, Elena said seriously. Best room in the house. I know, Mia beamed. And I have a real door now, with a lock and everything. Don't lock us out, Ryan warned. I won't, unless you're being annoying. That night, after Mia was asleep in her real bedroom with her real door, Ryan and Elena collapsed on their bed, also real, also new, also a reminder that this life was actually happening. We did it, Elena said. We're doing it. Still in progress. Fair point. Elena rolled over to face him. I need to tell you something. Ryan's stomach clenched at her tone. Okay. I talked to my captain today, the one from my old precinct. He called to check in, see how the transfer was going. And? And he apologized. Said the reassignment was politically motivated and he regrets not fighting harder for me. He offered to put in a request to have me transferred back if I want. Do you want that? No? The new precinct is actually better. Better schedule, better team dynamics. But it was nice to hear that I didn't imagine the unfairness of it. Elena paused. He also said Tom, the guy from the party who was a jerk to you, put in for early retirement. Apparently he's been making a lot of people uncomfortable, and your pushback that night started people talking. I didn't mean to cost someone their job. You didn't. You just refused to be quiet when someone was being inappropriate. Tom cost himself his job by being Tom for 20 years. Elena took Ryan's hand. But it made me think about consequences and choices, about how speaking up can cost us things, but staying silent costs us more. What are you saying? I'm saying I want to marry you, not now, not this week, or even this year. But someday, when we're both ready, I want to make this official. I want Mia to have stability and permanence. I want us to be a real family, legal and everything. Ryan's heart was doing complicated acrobatics. That's a pretty big statement. I know, and if it's too much, it's not too much. It's perfect. Ryan pulled her closer. I want that too. All of it. But you're right. Not yet. Let's live in this house for a while first. Let Mia adjust. Make sure we can actually coexist without driving each other crazy. Very practical. One of us has to be. Elena laughed and kissed him. I love you, practical carpenter man. I love you too, impulsive police officer woman. They fell asleep tangled together in their shared bed, in their shared home, building their shared future one day at a time. Summer arrived with Portland's brief perfect weather, and Ryan's work exploded with new projects. The referrals from Lake Oswego had led to more referrals, and suddenly he had more work than he could handle. He hired an assistant, a young guy fresh out of trade school who reminded Ryan of himself 6 years ago. The financial stress that had defined his adult life eased into something that felt almost like security. Mia thrived in the new house. Her cardboard cities expanded to fill not just her room, but parts of the living room and basement. She made friends with neighborhood kids and started talking about second grade with excitement instead of anxiety. She called Elena by her first name, but introduced her to friends as my dad's person, which seemed to satisfy everyone involved. In August, on a weekend when the weather was cooperating and the house felt settled, Elena brought up the balcony again. The tomatoes survived, she said, standing on their back porch looking at the plants that had somehow made it through transplanting and neglect. They did. Against all odds. I was wrong about them not getting enough sun. David would be smug about that. Elena smiled, the first time she'd smiled when talking about David in a way that felt light instead of heavy. He really would. She turned to Ryan. I want to scatter his ashes. I've been keeping them in a closet for 4 years, and that's not where they should be. Where do you want to scatter them? The coast. We went there on our honeymoon. There's this spot near Cannon Beach where the cliffs meet the ocean. I think he'd like it there. Okay, when? Next weekend? Just you and me. I need Mia to be okay with it, but I think this is something I need to do without her there. Ryan understood. Some grief was private, even when you were building new futures. I'll ask Mrs. Chen if she can watch Mia for the day. The following Saturday, they drove to the coast, David's ashes in a simple wooden box on Elena's lap. The drive took 2 hours through green Oregon forests and small towns that existed primarily for tourists. Elena was quiet, staring out the window, and Ryan let her be. The spot Elena had chosen was exactly as she'd described: dramatic cliffs dropping to a rocky beach, the Pacific stretching to the horizon in shades of gray and blue. They parked and walked down a steep trail, Elena carrying the box with both hands. At the edge of the cliff, Elena stood for a long time just looking at the ocean. Ryan stayed back, giving her space for whatever private conversation she needed to have. "I'm ready now," Elena said finally, "to say goodbye. Not to him exactly, but to the life we planned, to the person I was when he was alive." She opened the box. "I'll always love you, David, but I'm choosing to live now. I hope that's okay." She scattered the ashes into the wind, watching them drift out over the water and rocks below. Some caught in the updraft and swirled higher, some fell straight down. All of it returned to the earth and ocean that had held David's life in the first place. Elena cried, but quietly, peacefully. When the box was empty, she turned to Ryan and let him hold her while the ocean crashed below and the August sun warmed their backs. "Thank you for being here," she whispered. "Always." They stayed at the coast for the rest of the day, walking the beach and eating overpriced seafood at a tourist trap restaurant. The drive home felt lighter somehow, like Elena had set down weight she'd been carrying and could finally stand up straight. That night, back in their house with Mia asleep upstairs, Elena pulled Ryan onto the back porch, where the tomato plants were heavy with fruit that would probably never fully ripen before frost came. "I'm ready," she said. "For what?" "For everything. Marriage, making this official, all of it." Elena took his hands. "I know we said we'd wait, but I don't want to wait anymore. I want to choose this life deliberately instead of just drifting into it." Ryan's heart raced. "Are you proposing to me?" "I don't have a ring or a plan or anything romantic, but yeah, I guess I am." Ryan laughed, the sound bubbling up from somewhere deep and joyful. "Okay." "Okay?" "Yes. Let's get married. Let's make this official. Let's choose each other for real." Elena kissed him hard, and Ryan thought about how far they'd both come from that rainy night when she'd stopped him on the street. How they'd rebuilt balconies and lives and futures that seemed impossible but turned out to be exactly what they needed. They got married in October, a small ceremony in their backyard with Mia as flower girl and Marcus as best man and Elena's family traveling up from California. It wasn't fancy or elaborate, just people they loved in a space they'd built together, making promises they intended to keep. Mia asked that night, after guests had left, and it was just the three of them, "Can I call you Mom now?" Elena's eyes filled. "If you want to." "I want to. But sometimes I might still say Elena, just because." "That's perfect. You can call me whatever feels right." Mia hugged Elena fiercely, this 6-year-old who'd lost one mother and gained another through a series of choices and accidents that somehow added up to family. That night, Ryan stood on their back porch, not a balcony, but close enough, looking at the life he'd built. A house he owned with the woman he loved. A daughter sleeping safely upstairs in her own room. Work that meant something. A future that felt solid instead of fragile. Elena joined him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "What are you thinking about?" "How none of this was part of the plan. How I was convinced for years that this kind of happiness wasn't meant for people like me. And now? Now I think maybe I was just scared. Scared to want more. Scared to believe I could have more. Scared to let anyone in who might leave. I'm not leaving. I know." Ryan turned to face her. "I know that now. It only took you being relentlessly persistent and brave enough for both of us. We were brave together. That's what made it work." They stood together as Portland's autumn air turned cold and the tomato plants finally surrendered to the season. Inside, their daughter slept. Around them, their home held all the evidence of a life lived fully, instead of just survived. Above them, stars emerged from clouds that had been threatening rain all day, but decided, for once, to hold off. Ryan Hale was 29 years old, married to a woman who'd stopped him on the street because he matched a suspect description, raising a daughter who built cities out of cardboard and had opinions about everything. His life was chaotic and beautiful, and nothing like what he'd imagined at 22 when everything fell apart. It was better. So much better than anything he'd dared to hope for. And as Elena pulled him inside to warmth and home, and the future they'd chosen deliberately, day by day, door by door, Ryan realized that sometimes the best things in life weren't planned at all. Sometimes they were accidents that turned into choices, that turned into love, that turned into everything. Sometimes you just had to be brave enough to walk through the door when someone offered to open it. And sometimes, if you were really lucky, the person opening the door decided to stay and build something with you that was strong enough to weather any storm. Ryan and Elena had done exactly that, and they were just getting started.